Welcome, everyone. We are just working on some links on the background for Patreon and also on Instagram. So we will get started shortly. All right. Hey, what's up, Clyde Moore? Welcome, welcome. Oh, man, that's going to be great. What time is it? Yeah, because that started at 7 p.m. Central. So they've been going for about an hour now. How's that going? Give us some clips on updates on that, Clyde Moore, as you're listening. Maybe we'll discuss some of the key points of that. You mean like tech people, or are there people jumping on the live interview, Clyde Moore? They're doing everything they can to play interference. Probably got bots trying to overload. I did see that Elon Musk was doing some tests and scalability tests yesterday. So, you know, hopefully they were anticipating some type of attack like that. So we'll see. Hopefully it's just millions of people joining and a little bit of that, and hopefully not too much of the interference game. Actually, we may put this on hold. I'm going to try and... Hey, man, it's been going good. Kids back in school. So we're going to try and do a little bit earlier here on the lives. But good week. How about you, Clyde Moore? Kingpin, welcome, welcome, Toko. Ooh, hot in Arizona. Yeah, you're probably like what, 106, 105? We'll go ahead and get started with our intros here. And Clyde Moore is going to keep us on in the updates. Cousin Elon and Uncle Donald are having an interview right now. So Clyde Moore will keep us up to date on any developments there. But we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, to another live episode of the PolyEyes podcast. We'd like to welcome you from wherever you're tuning. We are currently running live on Facebook, YouTube, X, Instagram. We are also going on Patreon. And so we are live on all those platforms. Feel free to send any comments from wherever you're tuning in from. We'll be able to pull those up in the comment section. I know right now probably a lot of people are listening in to that Donald Trump and Elon Musk. And as we say, cousin Elon and Uncle Donald. So some of our Kava Session brothers and sisters will be keeping us updated. Specifically, Clyde Moore here said he's going to keep an eye, give us any developments. From his perspective, it looks like there may be some cyber attacks going on trying to shut down the interview. So Clyde Moore will keep us updated on that. Malo Kingpin looks like Kingpin is saying it is nice and toasty out in Arizona, 100 and up. So seems like everybody's been pretty toasted over there. Orator, welcome. Did see your comment, kind of asking for a schedule of our digital kava sessions. Because this is the night gig and the love of the game effort here on the podcast, it kind of goes with the flow. It's hit and miss. We try to have at least 2 or 3 a week, but great to see you're able to join us all the way from West Sydney, Australia. Hey, Orator, what's your team? What's your favorite team up there in the NRL? Any specifics there? Share us who you're cheering for. Some updates we're getting from the Donald Trump, Uncle Donald, and cousin Musk interview. They're overloading the system so much that it's difficult to get anyone's lives on X. Wow, that's crazy. So looks like there's definitely two major possibilities. Either so many people are, or possibly 3, so many people are tuning in to the Uncle Donald and cousin Musk interview that it's overloading the system, though Elon said he was doing some tests yesterday to kind of hopefully prevent this. Or the second option is there are cyber attacks going on trying to overwhelm X as a platform and shut it down, or both. The combination of so many people and then also so many people joining the interview and then also cyber attacks. So looks like Clyde Moore's tapping out. That was one of the things we were going to look at. We were going to check out what's going on over there. South Central Water Bears, South Central LA. Stay safe there, Water Bears. It looks like Clyde Moore is going to be coming to your neck of the woods over there in Cali. So maybe he'll swing by a Kalapu in the area and catch up with you guys. Orator looks like a Penrith Panthers and the Dolphins. Okay. Nice. Looks like both of those will make top 8. Obviously, the Panthers more than likely going to be in the top 4. I think they get a bye, so that may have an impact on that. So we'll see. Hopefully, Uncle Donald and cousin Elon are able to get through the challenges they're having on their interview. Obviously, this is Donald Trump coming back to X, so it's big news. Cousin Elon and Uncle Donald seem to have kissed and made up, trying to get along to move forward some of the ideas that hopefully will benefit the United States and the world. So we'll see how that continues. And maybe we'll have some discussions on that later on. Oh, God loves you, Malo Toko. Welcome, welcome. Yep. Hey, and we're gonna put these all on the podcast playlist, all the lives. We're trying to catch up with that and make sure we're up to date with that. Um, we're also going to be putting them on Spotify. We've gotten some good feedback from some of the listeners that they really appreciate the Spotify um, playlist because it allows them to listen in as they're driving through, going through their commute, or during work. Just make sure we don't get ourselves in trouble with the corporate while you're climbing the corporate ladder, my brothers and sisters. So, with that being said, there's a couple things I wanted to do to kick us off. First, as usual, we have a lot of activity on our social media, and let me see here. We're going to do some responses to some of our videos because we'll kind of listen to the responses. We'll go through a couple questions. I mean, we're trying to be respectful, right? We we get a lot of accusations that we're just trying to be disruptive, that we're just causing trouble or trying to make a scene for the intent of getting views and likes and interactions. Though, hey, I'm not going to lie, it helps, but that's not the primary intent. The primary intent is let's have some conversations across the board. Here on the Polynesian Eyes podcast, we discuss history, we discuss sports, we discuss religion, we discuss, news updates, anything and everything comes on the table. Now, sometimes some of our digital Kalapu group here bring a little too much to the table. Not going to point any fingers, but looking at some of our regulars who feel a little too comfortable. But as they say, go to your priest or your bishop and confess there. Don't come and confess here on the Polynesian House podcast. Though one could say, hey, maybe I should encourage it because it brings more eyeballs and more listeners and entertainment. I don't know. All I know is we're just trying to do the give everyone the opportunity to have conversations, talk about topics, share ideas. We've had some great feedback across the board. And once again, want to thank everyone for the support and also thank everyone who's challenging our ideas, right? We're not expecting everyone to just line up and say, yes, 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 everything on the Polynesian Eyes podcast is 100% solid, smoking gun, gospel, foolproof. No, we bring the ideas and we let the ideas compete. We throw out ideas as hosts on the podcast. Our viewers are not shy in sharing their ideas. Many times we align, sometimes we don't agree, but that's fine. We throw it out on the table. We watch them. That's our version of the gladiator battles. Is instead of us going out there and trying to kill each other, we throw out the ideas, let the ideas battle. Let the data go out there on the table and battle. Have our minds sharpen against each other as we watch the ideas go against each other, and may the best idea win. And then we go from there. And an idea doesn't have to always win. Put it out there. Maybe there's not a clear and decisive winner, but everybody gets to look at it. Everybody gets to listen to it. Everyone gets to think about it. And then you can make up your own idea, your own decision. Or maybe you have new ideas that come around. So really, that's something that's really important to us, is having the conversations and not to shy away from them. That doesn't mean we have to be 100%, disregard other people's um, right to have their ideas or to just negate any ideas. Throw them out there, see what happens. But that doesn't mean everybody else has to shy away from what they believe just because, quote unquote, your idea got sacrificed 2 seconds into the first round. That's not our problem. That's your ideas problem. And it's better your ideas than something else. So, with that being said, let's do this. We're going to pull up our first video here. And we just wanted to bring up some of the videos that seems to get a lot of attention on social media, and we just want to do some clarifications. We want to tell people, give us an opportunity. Now, remember, when we put these videos on social media, they're like a minute. I do most of the clipping and shortening of the videos, and it's just trying to get some basic ideas out. Really, people respond as if these clips are the full context for some of the conversations. It's not. We're just trying to, adapt to the attention span of people. People aren't always willing to sit down to the long format that we have on the podcast and on the live sessions where we're sitting down here, chatting over multiple topics over an hour to 3 hours. Not everybody's interested in that. And it's also not feasible to get exposure to put 3 hour long videos all the time. So we chop up these videos, we throw it up there. Yeah, 100%, George, throwing out the snippet, 100%. And then we recommend people. Sorry, I'm reading the comments here without bringing it up. 100% agree, George. That's the point of the snippet. We throw it out in there, and then if it sparks your interest, dig in deeper. Right? That's the whole point of some of these conversations. And I will say this kind of forum of, whether you want to call it the digital kava session or the kava sessions that our ancestors held, that is a podcast format, right? It's a podcast slash debate slash public forum. That is how our ancestors conducted business. That's how our ancestors exposed each other to ideas. That's how our ancestors challenged ideas. You want bad ideas to die, right? I think that's something that's really important. We get also offended when one of our ideas gets slaughtered immediately by someone who has a better idea. Or if you really believe in your idea, dig in more, right? And see if your idea has other avenues to express itself and to be successful. But if it is truly a bad idea, it should die, right? Because bad ideas that die in the idea phase leads to less pain and suffering in the real world. What's really a problem many times is you have a bad idea because it's stuck in your head and you haven't thrown it onto the battlefield of ideas. You build up this false sense of security of your idea, and then you get into a position of power, and then you enforce everyone on these bad ideas, and then you're shocked when things go bad. So we think it's a big thing to have ideas compete. That's why we come here. Water Bears, throw your ideas out there and see what happens. But if you don't like what you hear, then we can throw hands. Oh yeah. Hey, Water Bears. Water Bears. The Mr. Atearoa is not here to do the filtering. So I'm gonna blame this. We're gonna blame this on Mr. Atearoa to not come here and rubber stamp. I think Water Bears, who is our official PR, he is the conscious of the podcast. He speaks directly from a point of view of honesty. So hopefully we don't have to get there, Water Bears, but that's right. That's what happens when you get offended when your idea gets slaughtered. Then all of a sudden, because your idea is weak, you try to enforce it with force. But it's funny, but that's what happens, right? When you don't know how to have your ideas battle for you, you resolve to physical conflict, and then that's not always a good thing. Number one, you're not always guaranteed to win, right? You have a bad day. It's better to have a bad day with ideas than a bad day where you get knocked out. And there's always that issue with the law. So, Water Bears, as usual, straight to the point. All right. So, we're going to listen to this first one. So, this first video, a lot of people have come back and said, well, you're making claims. You need to bring the ideas and how they responded to this video. I want to play this video, and then I just want to talk through the context as to why this video was cut up. And granted, this is probably a 4-minute discussion that happened on the podcast. We snipped it down to about, I think, a minute or just under a minute. So let's listen to it real quick and see what was going on there. Well, looks like we got a couple comments here. Makes me wonder, was Urkalala's idea to take down Captain Cook's ship a bad idea and never saw the daylight? Well, 100%, right? That's why you let the ideas fight. Because if taking Captain Cook was the wrong idea, right, or a bad idea, it got killed in the idea phase. Urkalala lives and continues, or something bad could have happened. You don't want to let the bad idea materialize if it's a bad idea. That's where we run into problems in life, when we implement bad ideas and don't let the bad ideas die. So that's an interesting point, George. Appreciate that. Let's play this video and just react to it real quick and give some more context. Empire in Tonga, you open it up, have all the bells and the whistles. I find it hilarious that some of these people show up and say, well, what's your evidence? And I'm like, dude, you bring some evidence to the table.
Are you talking about the peace person? Or
Yeah.
peace?
Increased peace, which, by the way, our viewers are absolutely fantastic. There's like 2 accounts that some of our viewers are like, you know what? We think this is the same guy. He said one of the guys. I wish I could find it. There's just too many comments, but I cracked up. One of our viewers was like, you know who you remind me of, Peace? You're that Mahu guy from the car analogy. You walk up to the Tu'imanua one. Squirrel is probably a little too generous. Tu'imanua line. Okay, that's it.
Oh, dang, my bad.
The car analogy.
I scrolled.
Here's another one. I think this goes along with in the Tangalo Empire in Tonga. You open increased peace, which, by the way, our viewers are absolutely fantastic. There's like 2 accounts that some of our viewers are like, you know what? We think this is the same guy. He said one of the guys. I wish I could find it. There's just too many comments, but I cracked up. One of our viewers was like, you know who you remind me of, Peace? You're that Mahu guy from Manti Teo.
having two personalities, eh? Some bipolar going on, man.
And then you wonder why we can't take you seriously on the Tu'imanua in the Tangalo Empire. Okay, so that's, we got a lot of people saying, you tried to be disrespectful. You're making claims. Okay, I'm gonna roll this back. So this is what we typically get online. Obviously, every one of the viewers are well positioned or understand the position that various people on the podcast take in regards to the Polynesian Empire, right? Whether the Tu'imanua, you have the Tu'ipulotu, you have the Tu'itonga, and everybody has different ideas as to which one was which. So we've presented certain pieces of data points, certain historical oral history. We've even put out some data points on the sophisticated nature of the Furitaunga, the Taumafakava, and other parts of mound building. We've talked about urbanization, how studies have shown that some of the Tu'itonga settlements areas are like 700 years older than even anticipated. We talk about the large fleet that the Tu'itonga had. We talk about all these data points. We talk about the ruins. We talk about all kinds of things. And we have a study tonight that, if we have time, it is one of the topics that we have for this evening, is that. And what do people say when we present those things? They say, well, what's your evidence? And we're like, dude, we've brought evidence to the table. And then when we ask them, that's our position, that's our idea, here's why we think the way we think, we try to bring a diverse set of data points. And you know what's always thrown at us? Oral history. And we appreciate oral history. It has value, right? And that's one potential data point. But even within the oral history, there are significant issues, right? Because you can find contradicting accounts even within oral history. And then one has to ask, who wrote this oral history? Typically, this oral history was recorded by Palangis. Then we also have one oral history, and this is one of the things we may look at tonight, is We're going to look at people say the cradle of the Pacific is Fiji or the Polynesia is Fiji. We have another oral account that says Samoa. We have an oral account that says Tonga. We're going to look at an oral account that says it's Tahiti area, right? French Polynesia area. So which oral history is correct? Which oral history are we all going to say that's the correct one if we're just going to go with oral history? That's why in this video, our proposed idea is what evidence is brought to the table? What is being discussed? As far as I can see, the Tongan Empire checks more boxes that it actually existed, then two, checks more boxes that it was more influential. And as more studies happen, it checks more boxes that it is older. So that's why we take the position we take. And so it kind of gets a little bit interesting. I don't know how to react to it, as to how to respond to that. But oral history, we've seen a lot of oral history. Orator, yes. The lot of history here to evidence to share. Hey, we would love to have you on the podcast, Orator. We can work that out. If you have data points that you want to walk through, you want to present, we can work something out. You just need a computer with well, it depends on if you're presenting. If you need a computer and a microphone, or I know for sure we can use an app on the iPhone, possibly an app on the Android system as well. We can work something out. Message us on any of our social media. Don't comment, because really we get a lot of comments of different variety. But if you message or email us, we will definitely get back to you. 100%. That's one potential area. But as we mentioned, we've also shown many videos of people in Samoa saying Pulemele Mound is for the Tu'itonga and that Tongans live there. We even went through the official government website that shares that Samoans come from Tonga. But like I said, there's contradicting accounts even within oral and written history. And so, but we would love to hear it. Let's work something out, right? If you have some videos that you want to present or share, and it's too difficult to put it in the chat, we can possibly look at that. If you're not comfortable coming on the program, understood. That's not everyone's slice of pie. That's fine. Maybe you could send over some videos. Just don't be like Brown Monk, one of our regulars. You know, Brown Monk sends us encyclopedias and asks us to read the whole thing. I was like, oh yeah, way Brown Monk, please. Brown Monk must be a PhD, because that's some heavy lifting. Excellent. Plenty of videos online. Let's collect those videos, Orator, and we could, save those links. And also we can jump online and we can walk through it, have the discussion. That's what we promote. That's what we want. We want conversations. We want ideas in the battlefield, right? And, at the end, the best idea will turn around to all of us and say, are you not entertained? That's the goal. That's the goal. Hey, just fair play to everyone. This is a island style program. You're going to throw in ideas. Sometimes you get a little pushback. Me and Mr. Atearoa get pushback from our viewers every once in a while, saying that, they disagree with us, and that's fine. So as we shared, right here, our brother Chaz is saying that he believes Orator is lying. But hey, we'll find out. We'll have the video and let everyone have those conversations. Missy Tonga, yeah, 100%. We would love to see it, and maybe we're wrong, right? I don't know all things. No one knows all things. So we'll see where that goes. No, 100% appreciated, Orator. Appreciate you being willing to join us and have the conversations. We are 100%. That's what we look forward to. Looks like Orator. See, this is what we're talking about. Thank you, Orator, for coming. You're getting some responses, feedback. Oh, Yahweh. Orator, this is a serious accusation that's brought up. It's fleas. Increased Peace that's mentioned in the video. That's our joke. One of Increased Peace's nicknames is Fleas. I don't know. I think Orator is speaking a little bit more truthfully, but I could be wrong there, Clyde Moore. I think he's different than Fleas, but hopefully so. Well, and right here, Chaz, I haven't heard every single Matapule. The challenge is what makes me somewhat open to what Orator is saying is we have all these PhD guys speaking about the Tuitonga coming from the Tuimanua and so forth. Wouldn't be surprised. All right. No, not that Orator. The new fella. Oh, Chaz. Oh, my bad. Orator. I misunderstood Clyde Moore's comment. I withdraw. I'm not defending Chaz. He is the new one to here. So maybe Chaz is trying to come undercover, cause some unnecessary disruption to prevent Orator from speaking. But we'd love to have you, Uso. That would be absolutely fantastic. Well, and that's the thing. That's some of the other challenges. If you're speaking about the Tuikanukupolu Mataapures, yes, 100%. There's a high probability they're pointing back to Samoa. The Tuikanukupolu, when first installed, being one of the sons of the Tuitonga, the influence of the Tuihatakalaua and the Tuitonga were very powerful. So the Tuikanukupolu imported a lot of Samoans. So there could be some truth to that. But once again, the Tuikanukupolu is the youngest and of the kingly lines, and so that's why we invite the conversation just to kind of give more context. So that was that video. That was kind of our response to all the people who just see the snippet and say, "Oh, we're making we're presenting an idea. Where's our evidence?" Well, we've provided our evidence, and so far, all we've heard from the other side of the fence, two sides of the fence, sometimes three, is, well, we have a family tree. Usos, Bosos, Tocos, wherever you from, Hawaiian brothers and sisters, everybody has a family tree. And not all of our family trees are accurate. We have DNA now. People who said that they were, I'm 100% Italian, do the DNA and find out not a drop of Italian blood. So family trees do bring some value, but they are not a deciding factor or a standalone data point that really can survive the battle of ideas. No, 100% Clyde Moore would love to do that. Orator from Samoa, perfect. Love to have you speak with us, Uso. That'd be great. Like I said, message us. Don't really put too much in the comments because it's kind of difficult for us. But if you message us, we will definitely work something out. So 100% looks like Orator is going to join us, and we'd love to do that. Not Tuitonga-san, but Tuihatakalaua-san. Correct, Mo. I stand corrected. You're right. I got a little too excited. Yes, it was the Tuihatakalaua son. Hey, Brown Monk, Malo, welcome. So with that being said, let's get to the next video. Looks like some good chat going on here with the group. Let's see. So we did the what's your evidence? Here's one that just got released in the same book. That this one just got released today, and it, especially on TikTok, we're super active on TikTok. I think if I remember correctly, we get like 100,000 views in every month or month and a half. So there's a lot of activity on TikTok. So this was released on TikTok, and we'll listen to the video, and then we'll kind of overview. Oh yeah, wait, yes. Before we go too far, on one of our most recent lives, we were discussing, I wasn't thoroughly convinced that, you know, USA basketball was guaranteed to beat France, but I wouldn't say it was a super dominant win, but a win nonetheless. You know, when Steph Curry is on fire, I mean, you have KD, you have LeBron, but when you add Steph Curry on fire, man, that's hard to overcome. But Victor Wembanyama is obviously, I'm in San Antonio. The Spurs love him, has an exciting future, but Toko was crying after the game. I think he was really trying to go for an upset, but good for him. Good for him. All right, so let's look at this video. So the context for this video is some of the defenders of the Tuimanua Empire, they send us these documents, and sometimes they're screenshots, sometimes they're photos of books and so forth that has recorded oral history of the influence and the power of the Tuimanua Empire. Well, lo and behold, some of our viewers said, hey, you know, those books that they're referencing, it's not all just pro Tuimanua. They're like a compilation of different ideas and records. And this video is one of the accounts in some of the books that are referenced as, you know, rock solid evidence. If you ever question the Tuimanua Empire and the Tuimanua is older than the Tuitonga, then you're just absolutely wrong. But then even within their own books that they reference, we find these accounts that these people reference as evidence of the Tuimanua. Most of these myths, especially those referring to divine origin, emanate from Manua. It is a well-established fact that the historical Tuimanua have all deliberately confined their influence to their own particular group of 3 small islands. Each Tuimanua studiously avoided being embroiled in the incessant petty quarrels and wars of his turbulent and ambitious western neighbor. Everybody knows that Tuimanua existed, but within Manua, and couldn't even expand outside of Manua, really. So how is it that we're going to say you managed or oversaw an entire civilization when that you couldn't even manage your own neighborhood? In the same book that these people, so this is one of the things that we're talking about, right? I mean, even within Samoa, it is recognized that the Tuimanua pretty much just stayed in Manua. In this record, I had to chop it up a little bit. They mentioned that there was one Tuimanua for a very short period of time that seems to have made some ground on the other islands of Samoa, but it was very short-lived, right? And they speak about basically Samoa many times being turbulent and ununified. That is what we're talking about. How is it that you can say oral history is 100% affirmative of the Tuimanua as an empire, when even within Samoa itself it says, yeah, the Tuimanua never really governed Samoa? So to me, once I hear that, and I'm like, so if you can't govern Samoa, then how is it that you can govern thousands of miles, millions of square miles of an empire? Right? That to me is hard for me to go beyond that. That's like someone saying, I am the president of the United States, but no one in my state recognizes me as an authority. That just doesn't add up to me. I just struggle. So that was the point of this video. Some people pop up and they're like, you know, the Tuimanua is older and blah, blah, blah. And then once again, what's thrown at me? Oh, oral history and everybody recognizes it. I said, no, 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 no. That's you. That's you thinking everybody recognizes it. Right? That's academics pushing that. I want to see a little bit more. I'm willing to give you. That's why in the analogy of the car, I'm willing to give the Tu'imanua having, I tried to give a squirrel. Mr. Atearoa said, no, mas tu, I wouldn't even give a squirrel. He said a hamster on the wheel running. There's something in there. There is, yep, there's an oral history. There's people who reference it. Okay. There are some people who are trying to say in some of the comments that I'm trying to say that Tu'imanua never existed. No, that Tu'imanua existed. There's no doubt about that. We know that Tu'imanua existed, but we're just questioning the validity of the idea that the Tu'imanua was the head of an empire that spanned thousands of miles and is the origin of a civilization that has spanned thousands of years. That's what we're debating. We're asking for that evidence, and people seem to kind of get a little distracted by that and say, hey, you guys are just trying to cause trouble, trying to make a scene. No, we're living by what we say at the end of all of our videos. Be curious and question boldly, right? And that's a double-edged sword. To question boldly also means when you are given a valid idea or truth that you cannot refute, then it goes against you too. You asked boldly, but you better be willing, when you throw a punch, you better be willing to take a punch. And that's where we're at. It feels like I want to get through some of our comments. I don't want to get too far. George here mentions the Lehauli clan of the village of Pelehake is originally from Samoa, explains the logic to a few Samoan families that speak. That's one really good explanation for it, George, is that, and that's why I'm open to say Orator may be correct, right? But let's sit down and look at it and have that conversation, because that is the case. Some people point to the letter that Tupou the First wrote to England, saying that the progenitors of the Tongans come from Samoa, and they automatically say, "Hey, Tupou the First said you guys come from Samoa." It's like, well, the Tu'i Tonga is married to Samoan women on a regular basis. One can say that their progenitors come from Samoa, but that does not mean the empire comes from Samoa, that the cradle of civilization comes from Samoa, and that the rich history and know-how of not only building an empire but maintaining it for thousands of years came from there. Those are two different things. They're not the same thing from my perspective. And so throwing that at us and saying, see, I was like, Shanna, a little bit more. Let's look at this in more than one dimension. Let's add some texture to it. Let's look at it. Let's challenge it in a few different ways. And then if it stands up to some of that, then we can say, hey, you know what? That idea can defend itself. Maybe that has something to it. But when you throw it on the table and, it's like that big muscle guy from Achilles where Brad Pitt just runs up and stabs him in the neck. He dies right there. If that's your idea, I apologize, but I'm going to be a hard pass on your position. Yeah, I mean, once again, I don't see the links. I don't know if I'm not seeing it here, Orator, but once again, collect those, put those together. Let's have a program. Let's make it happen. We've had discussions on the Umiti Orator. Nobody seems to know much about it. No one observed it. This is one of those things that, okay, we have the Inasi and the Polo Polo, and there are significant ruins. And the study we're going to walk through, if we get time to it today, is going to talk about the significance of monuments and how that's related to civilizations. For all we know, these guys came together once a month for a Sabbath meal. I don't know what to say. I don't know much about the Umiti. I'm not trying to be rude, but I'm just challenging the idea a little bit. Mo, Malo, welcome. James, looks like James has questions on the Umiti as well. But that could definitely be one of the topics we walk through. Would be the Umiti orator. Once again, willing to have that conversation. Yep, definitely 3,000 years. This is the other thing. There's not a lot of scientific evidence of the Tu'imanua, besides oral history, right? But I will say this: every time they dig into the Tu'itonga, the ruins, the civilization, the people on the island, the timeline gets older and older. So that's another thing. The more you dig into it, there's, I know Tevita Fale's Tuitonga list has 50 something, but as we look at the timeline, and Tevita Fale himself says there's probably more Tuitongas, but these are the Tuitongas that he could identify with a monument, with a langi, tied to oral history and a location, that makes sense to include that individual as a Tuitonga within that time frame. That type of sophisticated approach to the Tu'imanua line, from my perspective, doesn't exist. There are no ruins. There are no settlements. I mean, there's even discussions here that in some of the circles here that the Tu'itonga lived in Samoa for 5 generations. And that's basically with Kaulfo Nuafekai after his father was assassinated and he installed the Tu'iha Takalaua back in Tonga. He spends the rest of his life in Samoa. Don't know if that's tied to addressing rebellion throughout the Polynesian Empire, or if it was to kind of distance himself from any potential threats on Tongatapu. Who knows? But the Pulemele Mound seems to kind of fit that timeline before Tapu Osi returns and Ulakimata brings the Tu'itonga residents back to Tonga. So interesting. No, 100% there. And that's the thing. I mean, at the end of the day, Orator, a lot of our perspective is this. Tongans and Samoans are the exact same thing, right? That's, some people misunderstand, and maybe we'll find that video where we say Samoa as a nation didn't exist until colonization. Fiji as a nation didn't exist until colonization. What we're saying is this: there is not overwhelming or even reasonable evidence that Samoa had a self-governing, unified government and leader that oversaw Samoa as a quote-unquote late nation for significant periods of time. There have been rulers that popped up once or twice that had significant influence. The Marietoas that pop up every once and so. What's her name? Salamasina. They mentioned one to Imanua. But this idea of a national identity doesn't seem to come into existence until colonization, where the Europeans came and said, this little piece of the Polynesian Empire, which Tonga and Samoa were part of, which is one nation, that this piece of the Polynesian nation is Samoa, Tahiti, right? Cook Islands, Hawaii. Those were pieces that were broken off, and that's how those nations came to a national identity. It doesn't seem clear to me that national identity pre-existed. Now everybody points to Tonga and says, well, how about Tonga? Well, I'm glad you asked. The Tu'itonga and even the Tu'ikanukupolu, who now descends also from the Tu'iha Takalaua, which is also the same family as the Tu'itonga, have been ruling in Tonga for thousands of years. And they have been recognized as a unified ruler, not just in political, not just in social, but also in religious circumstances. That's how you build a national identity. That national identity, from our perspective, was throughout the Polynesian nation. And we say Polynesian nation. I understand. Once again, we get accused. Well, you speak about the foreign influence and then you use a foreign word to describe. That's the word that we all know. That's the word that we're all familiar with. We're trying to speak English and something that we can all understand and agree with. Tua is very welcome to try and join him speak, but I'm 100% Tui Tonga had dominance in the Pacific. Evidence exposed our. That's our position. Would love to understand that better. Um, this is the thing. Looks like orator. A lot of the guys here have questions, and the girls here have questions. Would love to sit down and walk through um, that idea and the concept and the position that you take. Bring it to the table. A lot of people here have a lot of questions, right? And that's what we want to have. We want the questions. We want to be able to have those conversations. All right, guys, you win. I can't get to all the comments. We're going to continue on with the videos. But I appreciate it. Great conversation. That's what we want. Yeah. Well, this one sticks out. Ortho 100% agree. This is one of the things that we're really trying to reinforce here is hold on. Sorry, my kids here are knocking on the door. Hopefully the house is not on fire. This is the thing that we're really trying to really, I know it seems rough and people don't understand yet. I'm hoping we can turn the corner on that, orator, and you are an important piece to that. Is we are all one people, right? And we need to come together. We need to recognize that. We need to accept it. But we also have to at least come to an agreement on our origin to some extent. I mean, it doesn't have to be 100% accurate, but there has to be some level of alignment, because we can't say we come together as a people when Tahitians say Tahiti. And that's one of the things, the videos we might look at today. Tahiti says they're the cradle of the Pacific. Samoa says they're the cradle of the Pacific. Tonga says they're the cradle of the Pacific. Fiji is even saying they're the cradle. And when I say Pacific, I meant Polynesia, of Polynesia, right? We're having all these. We can't all be right. How can we be unified when we're dispersed and not unified on our origins and where we come from? It's hard to say, yeah, we're built on the solid foundation and pushing in the same direction when we're all going a million different directions. That's a good point. Never thought about that, James. But we did have a discussion on, actually, let me see if I can find the video. Let me see. This video, actually, James, that it was actually a point of discussion on one of the videos that came up, was talking about that. The more I have the conversations that we're having, the more doubtful I get that even Tu'i Manua would have been a descendant of Tangaloa. I used to believe before all these discussions, Tu'i Manua was a descended from Tangaloa, but Aho Etu was just the heir. But the fact that they're even younger than Aho Etu is like, well, Tangaloa ended and they went to the Tu'i Tonga. And if the Tu'i Manua is younger than the Tu'i Tonga,
it could be an offspring from a Tu'i Tonga that had a kid with somebody from that island Manua. Because we same thing with Fiji. Samoa wasn't a nation back in those
didn't
days. It was just
exist. Yeah.
They didn't even exist until colonization. It was that a person from Manua, that a woman that had a child from Tu'i Tonga title holder, and probably gave birth and then gave birth to Manua, and maybe that's how it's.
So that's kind of related to your comment, James, and I was being very honest there. When we first started this podcast, and this is why I feel it's important to have these conversations, because it allows ideas to compete, and you can hopefully draw better conclusions and come to ideas that are better. I was pretty much had accepted that the Tui Manua descended, and when I say descended, all the Tu'i seem to be related to Tangaloa. What I meant by that comment was a direct descendant, right? A son of Tangaloa, who had a title and a responsibility through the practice of Tokatufa, which is what Masi mentioned, is the Tangaloa many times to maintain influence throughout the Polynesian Empire would have children with women and families of influence throughout Polynesia, and then that family or that heir or that individual would then be the representative of Tangaloa in his empire in that group of islands. I was very open to that idea. But as we're having these conversations and as more information comes out, and Aho Etu seems to be pushing more and more to the left, the conventional wisdom says Aho Etu 950 AD, De Vitafales list that's tied to archaeological, right, ruins, and also historical and oral data or history puts Ahoetu at 450 AD, and even he admits that's the best he could do in trying to tie it to what he calls the history in the land, and that the land is the book that recorded our history. That was his best effort there. But even I am starting to doubt even that initial idea that I had. And it seems to be more that there's a possibility just by pure line of authority of age of the line of authority that there's a good chance in my book I'm starting to lean that the Tui Manua may have been, and it does, and here's a great example. It's not in this video, but one of the other potential things we name is not the oldest son of the Tuitonga always. And when we say oldest son, the Tuitonga would have multiple wives, and not always the oldest son from one wife. Not the oldest between the son who were both firstborns from one wife would always get it. Prime example would be Urakimata or Telea and Lomueiki. Lomueiki was older, right? Their mothers were sisters, Samoan sisters, and their father was the Tuitonga. Lomueiki was older, and one would make the claim he being older should have had right first claim to the title of Tuitonga. But Telea, because that's where Urakimata comes from, Tapuosi said, the first one that I see, the Urakimata, the first face that I see who comes home will be the Tuitonga. And Telea was the first one to show up. Lomueiki shows up later. Now, Telea carries the title of the Tuitonga. Lomueiki holds a position of reverence and of recognition in Tonga because he is older than the Tuitonga per se. And that's recognized through Tonga. And so that is another possibility for the Tuimanua is he could have been an older son of the Tuitonga who did not get the title, but was recognized and reverenced by the Tuitonga saying, yes, this person, the Tuimanua, has a position of influence and reverence within Tongan society and therefore throughout the Polynesian nation as a whole. Yeah, interesting comments here, Maria Tola Tanu Mafuni. I think in an ideal world, orator, obviously, unfortunately, colonization happened, but in an ideal world, that would have been an awesome outcome if that were possible. That all of Polynesia where it was able to remain one nation. But for several reasons, that wasn't able to happen. But I agree that would have been. I think Maria Toa there was being very visionary, and maybe was reminiscing of days of old of our people, and what drove him to have that dream and that desire. No doubt there, those are definitely two of the most recognized kingly lines, if you want to call it that, or titles, is the Tuitonga and the Tuimanua. And I also want to make clear, because some of the comments in the social media we're accused of saying, well, everybody talks about, some people in Micronesia and some islands recognize the Tu'imanua. We are not challenging that the Tu'imanua may have had the capacity to navigate, the capacity of populating certain islands. We're not challenging that. What we're challenging is, was the Tu'imanua the head of the Polynesian nation as a whole? And that was the political, social, and the economic and political structure that managed and maintained the overall Polynesian nation. That's where we're doubting. Even we can see that in European recorded history. You would have certain lords many times more that were very influential within their regions and had high and significant influence and were given the freedom and the capacity to be very dominant in the specific areas that they were. But that did not mean they replaced the monarchy that was above them. That hopefully that gives some clarity. Trying to keep up here with the comments. Water bears. No, in many ways that's true, because we have to remember that, like, our ancestors, man, we were going back and forth all the time, right? It wasn't, especially the leadership, especially the royal bloods, because they're all one family, right? All the major leadership throughout Polynesia that were governors and regents in the different spaces all descended from Tangaloa, right? And many of them, after the Tangaloa title, from our perspective, transitions to the Tu'itonga. The Tu'itonga marries with those families over hundreds and thousands of years. So it is one big ball, right? And a knot. And that's maybe one of the reasons why we have the difficulty navigating it, is because it is very intertwined. We are the same people. We all have and share the same culture and DNA. But it gets a little complicated when all people are willing to say is oral history and the family tree that they hold on to. Oh, yeah. Let's see. All right. I think we kind of caught up there. I think we got the general idea there. We got a lot of we touched a lot of the comments coming back from social media. There's too many of them to get into, but these were some of the videos that got the most amount of interactions. And, like I said, I cut these clips to try and get a couple ideas through, and it can be a little bit challenging without context. Really invite everyone. This is why we have the long forum, right? Some of our videos go up to 3.5 hours, because these are, to use water bears, it's a big ass knot of filo, right, of yarn that's knotted. It's complicated. This is why we throw the ideas on the table, let them battle it out. Oh yeah, guys, don't embarrass me. That's true. So yeah, malo to the wife for tolerating me. It's been a long day at work today. I went and picked up my kids. And then, you guys know how it is when you start to do the whakaheke heke and you start game planning on how you're going to get a visa to go out to Faikava. That I was scheming and planning, went and pick up the kids, did a couple good deeds, good chores, got some pizza, feed the kids. And then I said, hey, babe, I'm going to go and do a digital kava session. Is that okay? Then I came here, guys. But as you guys know, sometime, sometimes, the visa can get revoked sooner than anticipated. But that's not yet. Not yet. Oh yeah, we should name the podcast is the underground Tori Tori. Tori Tori is the prison in Tonga. So yes. Oh yeah, if I know and I know what a bears, it's okay. I'll take my lickings, you know. I'll take my humble pie and eat it by myself in the corner. These guys trying, they're putting me in my place. Saipe, saipe, nothing a big cup of kava can fix. What a bears, but I appreciate you looking out for me. What a bears, malo. Anyways, done feeling sorry for myself. Let's see. We already hit the first two topics, but there's a video. Actually, the second part. There's a video, and where did I save that? Okay, I put that in my Facebook bookmarked. There's a video of, one of the main points I wanted to walk through was, kind of shared why do we have this podcast? Especially when we're quote unquote talking about a topic that people think is sensitive and is just causing trouble, you know, Tua and Mr. Atearoa are just trying to ruffle the feathers and cause trouble, get eyeballs. I ain't gonna lie. I like getting the likes, the subscriptions. That helps. We're here for the long haul, right? And I hope that everyone who's listening and has been following understands that we're here for the long haul. We're here to provide content. This is why we discuss history, we discuss current events, we discuss sports, we discuss religion. We're trying to bring a broad platform that will facilitate conversations for as long as we can take it. And like Clyde Moore, Brown Monk, and everyone, for as long as the wife allows. Yes, 100%. That's definitely, we think it's important. And this next video is going to be tied to that. And so far, we've been having fun doing it, right? If it gets to a point where maybe it's not having fun, maybe I'm aging 10 times faster than I should be. Um, Maybe we should hand it off to a younger, more beautiful or handsome host to carry the torch. But until then, I'll be your guys' humble servant to keep our digital kava sessions. That's definitely going to be a T-shirt, I think. Digital kava session. No, 100%. And I appreciate your guys' time. Honestly, we were having this conversation with Masi and Maka. We appreciate your guys' time. We would do this even if there was just one viewer, and even if it was just our mom and dad and sister or whoever just in our family. We would do it because we're having fun with it. The fact that we got the regulars, we got new people joining all the time, following us all over on social media, that's just the cherry on top. But we appreciate your guys' time. So the next video is, let me share it here real quick. We'll do the response. And this individual is talking about how our history got to where it is now and what it may look like years from now. No, and that's an important part of the formula there, Clyde Moore. My father has poured his life, his sweat, blood, tears, you know, fortune, everything he can. He's thrown it at it. And that's why some of his ideas are so convincing, because Tevita Fale didn't just blah, blah, blah. Homeboy stepped up to the plate and said, I am going to address this. I am going to be the one to make something happen. So, nope, looks like we're back. So, this video is an important part, I think, gives an idea on why we think this podcast is important, why the conversations that we need to have should happen in providing this platform to it. So it's talking about how colonialism has impacted it, but we're going to take a little bit of a broader interpretation of it and why it's important.
Came into our races. They beat they beat out of us the power of oratory, right?
Yes.
They then convinced us that all of our stories are boogaloo myths and legends.
Yes.
When you move a story from actuality and tangibility to hoogabugaloo myth, you are saying it's not true.
Yes.
That's why they call it a myth and a legend.
Mm.
They did that. They also then say this pen and paper is mightier unless it is written
Mm.
is non-believable.
Mm.
Look at what we do now. To find out the whakapapa of our lands, we go to Berlin. Apparently, Berlin and Germany has the most completed record of Samoan lands because they were the ones who mapped Samoa.
Mm.
When they left, they took it with them.
Mm.
Part of what I'm saying may partially be untrue, but most of it I've come across is that our records belong to someone else because pen and paper is now mightier than the oratory power
Absolutely.
of the people they once called the Dark Age. And I always ask people, so people who are dumb and stupid, were they able to navigate the stars like we did?
Exactly.
So who's dumb?
Mm.
All right. But that's where a lot of what we do is demystifying and trying to readjust the narrative that we were left with. We always say to people that 2023, we are the product of a va'a that sailed in 1830.
Mm.
1830 is when the church was established in Samoa. That was the change of Samoan history. And it changed the narrative of how a Samoan walks and talks.
Yes.
Now, 2023, all we're left with is a lot of beliefs, but filled with potholes of our actual culture.
Mm.
What we're doing is to make sure the va'a that's sailing now lands 200 years from today,
Mm.
a lot more together and more information for my children, their
Mm.
children's children, and whoever is going to come from me.
Mm.
And you and his children.
Yeah.
So that's the plan. Colonial.
100% agree with this Uso right here. That's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to capture as much of our history as possible today because we have observed what has been lost since our ancestors were a unified Polynesian nation that endured for thousands of years to where we are now. And the question now becomes, there's a lot of potholes, like he's saying. There's a lot of ambiguity. There are religious ideas that have popped in. There are cultural ideas that are competing with it. There are political ambitions that are muddying the water. There are just, good intentions, but misguided information injected into it. And if we continue to do that, what does 200 years look like? And we're the ones that were here. We're the ones that can do something now. But we have to be willing to have the hard conversations. What I think people don't understand many times is they'll sit here and we all agree with the Uso right here. We got to do the hard work. We got to figure out what our past is. But then we don't want to go through the pain that it'll take, the sacrifice that it'll take, the humility that it'll take, the courage that it'll take, right? The the word that's coming, the what's the word I'm looking for? The faith that it'll take. Because no one was back then. Nobody, everybody, that's what I'm saying. At the beginning of this session, this kava session here, the battle of ideas. This is how our ancestors built the Polynesian nation. This is how our ancestors developed the navigational capacity. This is how our ancestors had the courage and the faith to go out into the middle of the ocean. And we exercise those same traits today. You look at our ancestors who have left the islands and gone all around the world. Doesn't matter. There's Polynesians in every corner of this earth. They're living the same thing that our ancestor did thousands of years ago, to not only go out into the unknown and find these islands, then to have the courage to leave everything that you know to go out and to create something from nothing, create order from the chaos on a uninhabited island, or an island that may have had indigenous people, but to bring quote unquote civilization to them, to bring order to them, to leverage the resources there to improve their lives and the lives of our ancestors. We are still exhibiting those characteristics today subconsciously. And the reason is because our ancestors have been doing it for thousands and thousands of years. In many ways, we can't help it. We behave certain ways and exude these qualities. This is why I firmly believe Polynesians have something to bring to the table for the world. The world seems to be yearning for what our ancestors have endowed us with to today. It is the loyalty to family. It is the enduring faith in a supreme being. It is the willingness to go and create something out of nothing. It is the fortitude to go through challenges and say, yeah, I understand the world's against me, but I'm going to do what I know is right. Those are not easy. And it is also true about restoring our history. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be, cakes and ice cream. We might kind of bump elbows, we might push each other around, but sometimes that's what's needed to push us forward. TJ, welcome. Not familiar with you, but hey, we welcome you. Appreciate your comments. Thank you for bringing it up. Your ancestors were so evil. Go look at the Palangi's back. Then that visit Tonga beyond evil, witchcraft, sacrifice, etc. Oh yeah, well, I think this is increased fleas. We appreciate it. But here I'm going to challenge that. I'm going to challenge that by doing this, because one of the things that we definitely promote is Hikuleo is the God Jehovah from the scriptures. And I'm very firm in that. There's many, many reasons why I believe that. However, because we don't just rely on oral history or just an idea that's isolated to my echo chamber or to just my little inner circle and my personal thoughts, I will highly recommend TJ a podcast and a website. Okay, and I'm going to share it. I'm about oh, I don't know what's. Oh, you know what? I think because I'm zoomed in. Yes, that's why. No, no, no. This website seems to be a little wonky. Okay, this is what I'll share right here. TJ, appreciate your position. Um, that is a very surface level. One could make the argument he restored the ancient Tongan way. Okay, I understand that what your position is, that he changed it. Yeah, or one could say if you understood the ancient way, that he restored it. So let me do this. Okay, looks like this website is. This is a website that I would highly recommend to help develop the concept of our ancestors potentially knowing that Hikuleo was Jehovah. This website, and it's related to a podcast. There's a handful on YouTube, but then she continues on this website that you can come and you can walk through. And basically, scientists, historians, archaeologists, anthropologists some of the most respected say every ancient society exhibits, unusually exhibit, similar traditions that all tie back to a single source of information. And when you look at the broader context, you can see threads of commonality and threads of evidence that all of these religious and origin myths or so forth seem to originate from the same source. That is one of many data points to consider. So, highly recommend, TJ, go take a look at this, listen. And after listening to this, I think you may be somewhat open to the idea that Taufa'ahau restored the true religion. Maybe that's the reason why God was so willing to listen to a lot of the miracles that Taufa'ahau tested God with. God says, do not, test him. Yet every time Taufa'ahau tested him, God responded appropriately. Why is that? One could argue is maybe, just maybe, God is saying you guys need to come back. You've done a little hiatus. Maybe that's why the Polynesian nation disintegrated or fell, because we deviated too far from the source. Who knows? That's my idea. Throw it out there. You guys can shoot it, wrestle with it, see what happens. Shout out to Orator. Thanks for being respectful. Yeah, 100%. Appreciate it. And once again, for real, would love to have you on the show, walk through, present. Like I said, it's not going to be a debate. Would love to just listen, walk through what your perspective is, where those ideas come from. Would be more than willing. Brown Monk, the ancient Polynesian beliefs were similar to that's. We even have the early Christian missionaries writing down some of those observations as well, as Brown Monk saying. So it's not just us, TJ. There seems to be other people there that agree. Let me do this, man. I went through the time to build out some of these things. So let's put that up there. Some of the topics there. Let's go back here. So that's a podcast that I would highly recommend. So we'll come back here. We'll transition to our next topic, but that's really, as that one video from that Uso who shared, we're trying to keep the history together, package it, identify the best ideas, preserve those, record those, and say, next generation, this is the best we could do with what we had. We're not saying it's perfect. We're not saying we did everything. But what we're saying is this is our gift to you. Hopefully you'll appreciate it. And then, ideally, not just appreciate it, but carry it on, refine it, challenge the bad ideas that we weren't able to slay, add more to it, and then hand it off to the next generation. Let's see. Yeah, so as we discussed earlier, what we're going to do is we're going to discuss, here is the question for the next segment. Which cradle is the cradle of Polynesia? Tonga, Fiji, Samoa, and then what the video is tied to, Tapu Tapu Atea. So we're sitting here and we're sitting there and having conversations of Tonga, Samoa, Fiji, which cradle, and we, brotherly love. There's a lot of relationship between those three groups. And we have a lot of our conversations between those three. However, it is not just Tonga, Fiji, and Samoa who claim to be the cradle of Polynesia. And where did I save that? I think that was YouTube. So we're going to go to YouTube and we're going to watch another video. And this is a video related to what French Polynesia claims is the cradle of Polynesia. So let's watch and see what our brothers to the east, who many times claim really didn't belong to the rest of Polynesia or under Polynesian rule. So let's see what they have to say.
Taputapuatea is my name. I am spread over 2,500 hectares on the island of Raiatea, also called the Sacred Isle, the Isle of Ancient Kings. My territory begins out at sea and ends on the mountain ridges. From the Teavamoa Pass to Motuatara, through the lagoon and the bays of Opua and Hotopu'u, all the way to the peaks of Mounts Teaitapu and Te Orofatiu. I am home to a place of worship that is important throughout the Pacific, a place where the chiefs of old would gather to make political decisions, where kings were enthroned, and where human sacrifices were performed. This place is called the Taputapuatea Mare.
Taputapuatea peut signifier plusieurs choses parce que bon, tapu ça veut dire interdit, c'est aussi l'interdit, mais c'est aussi le sacré. Le marais de Taputapuatea, c'était le plus grand par sa croyance, par ses dieux, parce que c'était dit que Ta'aroa, premier dieu de la mythologie polynésienne, le plus grand, le marais de Taputapuatea a été édifié d'abord pour lui.
By my size and architecture, I am the most important of the Polynesian mare. More than 400 archaeological remains were found in my valleys, a priceless heritage left behind by elders that makes me a sacred place for all Polynesian people.
Tout dans cette vallée d'ailleurs est sacré. En partant de la montagne c'est Tea et Tapu. Tea ça veut dire le passage et Tapu ça veut dire sacré, c'est-à-dire le passage sacré. Disait-on que c'est à cause de Ta'aroa, parce que Ta'aroa était descendu du ciel, il avait passé son pied à travers cette montagne. Donc ça a fait un passage. En posant son premier pas, il avait bâti un marais. Et dans la mythologie polynésienne, c'était dit que c'est le premier marais. Donc tout ça donne un aspect vraiment important et sacré dans l'histoire du peuple polynésien.
I am at the center of the Polynesian triangle formed by Hawaii, New Zealand, and Rapa Nui. Eastern Polynesia is shaped like an octopus, Tumurei Whenua, with Raiatea, the head, in the middle, and its 8 tentacles spread over the whole of the Polynesian triangle, as if to join all the islands together.
Pour pouvoir bâtir d'autres marais dans d'autres îles, pour marquer la puissance, il faut que les voyageurs, ceux qui partent de l'île de Raiatea, partent avec une pierre de Taputapuatea. Quand ils partiront avec la pierre de Taputapuatea, ils vont bâtir leur marais et en pierre de fondation qui vient de Taputapuatea, leur marais prend de l'importance. Et Taputapuatea était le lien de tout le triangle polynésien. C'est un peu le berceau du peuple polynésien.
I am the sole witness of all the cultures on the greatest ocean on planet Earth. Like a bulwark, I have remained the origin to which all the peoples of the Pacific show reverence. In ancient times, the warrior chiefs of Rarotonga, Fiji, or New Zealand would come to me. Thousands have crossed the South Seas, and some hardliners still feel the need to do so today.
Otau te nuna lorto mai te matau teina. Tei e tō e pumura. Tō tātou moena te tei e te tei. Hera mahana te wawa nei te wharerei wahau nei tātou. Horeira, te rā mai, tā mātou wharirei o tō. O tō te tāngei.
Taputapuatea is the beginning of our religion and our history. We know that our people come from Tahiti, from Raiatea. We had temples Taputapuatea in Hawaii. On Kauai, on Oahu, on Molokai, we had 3 Taputapuatea there. So we know we come back and forth.
Harame ratu e te mana. Te mana no ni siu te ienei pū. No te mea aitatu e wahai e ro atara mea. Mautira, Taputapuatea. No te mea, ua parahui o ia e, te whenua moa, te marae moa, te awa moa. Oi whenua tu I tēnei. Horinya tia tō tātou e. Import autonomy Hawaii. Oe nei tēnei whenua.
You know, there are a number of reasons why this place is so special. Spiritually, culturally, we are connected. Malama Honua, which means to take care of our island Earth, really it is a very special place. And our kupuna, especially our kupuna here in Tapua Tapuatea, they knew that. They had these rich connections with their past. And I think for me, the newer generation coming up, we're kind of in a world where we face losing that connection. And so that is why it's important for us to take care of this area and to malama care for our connection to this area. And I feel that us being here and a lot of the younger generation being a part of this, in a large way, we're now part of that responsibility, stewarding that relationship to continue that Tapu Tapu Atea lives on. And it's not just something that you hear about, but something that is still perpetuated today. It's still being practiced. I inspire respect in my country and in the whole of the Pacific. I hope to keep the traditions alive so that the cultural values and the history can be passed on to the future generations. Polynesian culture has stood the test of time. I am Tapu Tapu Atea.
So there we go. So what do we do now? All right. We'll go through the comments here first, and then we will come back here. So TJ, where can I find this video? I will paste the video in the response, the link to the YouTube video. You can find that there. To the Maori tribe, this place is sacred, but also there are many Tapu Tapu Atea throughout Polynesia. This was known as our main Tapu Tapu Atea. Well-known navigators from Aotearoa gathered at, then left. I could name lots. So before I kind of go into some of those comments, great feedback there. God loves you. The question now arrives as we now look. We have people who say Samoa, cradle of the Pacific. Some people who say Tonga, cradle of the Pacific. Some people who say Fiji, cradle of the Pacific. Then now we have others who say Tahiti, cradle of the Pacific. And I don't doubt that there's probably others out there. So what do we do now? Do we just say, oh, we don't want to ruffle the feathers, we don't want to cause trouble, let's just, everyone's right? Well, if everyone's right, then no one's right in my book. Because it's very difficult. Unless we get more clarity to really explain how everyone's right, it's harder to believe that everyone's right. So how do we make sense of this chaos, right? Because that's what I see. It's chaos. And if we want to provide a consolidated and a better understanding of our history, we got to ask some questions, and we got to try and find answers for them. So, oh, Nacho, welcome, Maro. We don't have a schedule. We are unfortunately, like how our ancestors traveled. There's a general idea, right? There were the good seasons to travel, the best times to travel. We meet at certain locations at different times of the year. We didn't have an exact date, but we said in these general days or weeks. That's kind of how our kava sessions go. It's whenever we can get our visas approved, we have a kava session. But Malo Nacho, welcome. So that's the challenge that we have. That's the challenge that we have now. This is why in the beginning we said we have to have the ideas compete. We got to figure it out. We don't have to, but I think because we may never figure it out in a lifetime. Everyone can believe what they can believe. But I think we owe it to everyone now and our ancestors and for those who come after us to try and get an answer, right? To try and get an answer. So as there we go right here. Need to have a huge conference, bring historians to every land, bring your stories. Yes, 100%. You know, and at the very least have the conversations now. Right? That's the beauty of the digital age. It's really expensive to have everyone meet physically, you know, have a whole conference. Maybe that's in the future. Yeah, 100%. Maybe it's a digital conference. Maybe that's something that materializes in the future, but we have to start somewhere. And that's what we're hoping to provide here. Is it's, you know, maybe it's too small, not big enough for some people, but for us, this is a decent enough starting point. So, coming back to your comments earlier, we have a theory that we'll throw out there, um, because here's the things that we recognize. We recognize that Tapu Tapu Ateas existed, that these were important meeting places, and that these places were in many different areas in Polynesia. And once again, they speak of Tangaloa. So we're seeing that this is all coming from the same origin. But it seems to be a little bit muddied in the water, and we don't have the clarity to really distinguish. However, one of the things, looks like we have, remember, and I'm going to try and answer that question. God loves you. Remember, I asked how could the Maori get past the Tongan Empire around 1200 AD if Tonga ruled around that time. Here's what I will throw out there: what some of the oral history expresses and what we see on certain behaviors of the Tu'itonga. This could have been older than the Tu'itonga. That this may have been a practice that predated Tu'itonga, but there is some oral history that shares some ideas, right? When the Polynesian nation got so spread out, it became extremely tedious to have everyone come to Tongatapu for the Inasi and the Polo Polo twice a year. You got to remember, this is thousands and thousands of miles, right? Tonga was not in an ideal location as the most southern portion or location in the empire, apart from Aotearoa. I recognize that. But in regards to just general location, it was far south, not east, sorry, far south. There was a practice that was instituted because remember, as we have expressed, the Tangaloa and the Tu'itonga practice tokatufa, which is intermarrying with influential tribes or tribal families throughout Polynesia, and the descendant from those unions would become the ruling families in those areas. It was instituted by the Tu'itonga that because of the vastness of the nation and the empire and the difficulty and the burden, let's put it this way, the burden that it placed on the empire became so great that basically regions and locations were set up as specific areas that various island groups could drop off the Inasi and the Polo Polo rather than going all the way to Tonga. And so that practice was pretty well accepted in the oral history in Tonga. And I going off the top of my head, but I want to say it was slightly just before Momo and Tuitatui's time, that it was slightly before that. That's when that practice was instituted. It may have been a practice that was also instituted by Tangaloa as well, right? So that could be a potential explanation. And like you're saying, remember I asked about the Maori get past the Tongan Empire. Not everybody was probably on board with leadership, right? I mean, there's stories of the Tu'imanua family, some of them escaping to Micronesia to get away, escaped. There was some conflict, so they escaped to Micronesia looking for freedom there. That could also be true of certain parts of the Polynesian nation that, for one reason or another, we're not in alignment with the Tuitonga or Tangaloa. You can also note that there were times that Tonga went under some civil war that led to fragmentation in the Polynesian nation. The biggest example of that is Kaulfo Nuafekai. When his father was assassinated, he seemed to have gone on a military campaign after that, which may be the reason why he installed his brother as the Tu'iha Takalaua. And that may be the reason why he relocated his residence to Samoa. And the Tu'itonga lived in Samoa for 5 generations before returning, because maybe Samoa was a better location to build resources and to go to other parts of the empire or the Polynesian nation to maintain control. That could be a potential answer to that. God loves you. Not sure if that helps at all. Where's the... Looks like there's some good information changing. That's what we want. Some looks like there's some Samoa Akoa media that's being shared. That's what we want. I was thinking we were one anyway, so maybe Tonga says, way you go, been there, too cold, can't grow. Well, and it's funny that you bring that up, God loves you, because growing up and I would hear these stories and I used to think, like, why in the world would the Tu'itonga choose Tonga? Right? There are much bigger and other islands that seem to have more resources. Why would they choose Tonga? I mean, and one of the things that crossed my mind when we were in Samoa and American Samoa, American Samoa is much larger. It's mountainous. It's actually very difficult. This is one of the reasons why maybe it was very difficult to unify Samoa. There are pockets of isolated shorelines and communities, very difficult when you have that type of terrain to maintain power, to unify the power per se, right? And so it may have made more sense to install different chiefs over different sections, and then rule as a monarch over that. That could have been a reason, or an approach to it. And also, there's advantages of not being big. And Tonga, for being a coral island, has very rich soil, unusually rich soil for a coral reef island. And then also, it's relatively isolated from the rest of Polynesia. So it, as leaders, to kind of, managing access is important to maintaining the aura of a god or demigod. And maybe being in Tonga and being so isolated help maintain the aura of the Tu'itonga and Tangaloa. So when if they were ever to visit other parts, it would be very rare and far and in between, and only the royal or upper influence families from all the islands would come to Tonga. I don't know. There's potential ways to explain that. Those are just some ideas, and in that could possibly be the reason why, for that question. God loves you, but definitely New Zealand would have been way too cold from what the typical climate that the Tu'itonga probably would have preferred. But also, the Tu'itonga like to be in Samoa, and Samoa to me is pretty uncomfortable weather. It's a lot hotter than Tonga Tapu. Maybe that's why they were in Tonga Tapu. I don't know, but they did spend a lot of time in Samoa, so they weren't too uncomfortable with that. If you see most of the islands after colonization, a lot of new harbors. If you see Tonga, it has a natural harbor, and that's a fair point. That's a fair point there, Clyde Moore, and that's actually one of the reasons why I believe England really wanted to colonize Tonga and wanted to position itself in Tonga was because of the natural harbor, especially Vava'u, for two reasons. It's England with a navy and having a natural harbor where they didn't have to invest time and energy. A natural harbor was critical for them to maintain power, not just in the Pacific, but globally, right? It's the same reason why China and the US are so, well, the US used to be, but mostly China now is so invested in building influence in the Pacific, because if something bad were to go on or war, who has friends in some of these pieces of ocean can be critical, if there were ever a conflict. So yeah, it that could be a big reason behind that as well. And it also to prevent threat, right? If the British Empire has multiple colonies in the Pacific trying to control routes in and out of the Pacific and through, if France, Germany, um, the US, though the US is very young at the time, but the US, if they were to have access to that natural harbor, it would give them a strategic advantage and could be a potential threat to the United Kingdom and their navy. Another injury, yeah, 100%. You can stick any seed in the soil and it'll grow 100%, and not even a seed, Nacho. What really shocked me a lot of times, you cut a branch and stick it in the soil in Tonga and it'll grow, right? You don't even need a seed. Cut off a branch, stick it in the ground, and the stuff just grows. It really is some amazing stuff. And after this Hunga Tonga and Hunga Ha'apai eruption, some of the reports are after the eruption, after everything's settled and there's rain, that the whole island just turned into an intense green, a greener green that they were used to, just because of that infusion of um, resources into the soil that probably just enriched it even more. The colonizers ripped into the bedrock to make harbors for their ships in Tonga. Kugai's landing spot is where Tangalos reside. Fair point. Fair point. Right? That is a very, very fair point. I mean, that's definitely something that should be taken into account. Hey Nacho, did you have those what we would call it growing up in Tonga, temata America, the American tomatoes? Is that what Clyde Moore is talking about here? The best island to grow. Oh yeah, way. That's a good. Hey AJ, did you change your name from lowercase to uppercase? Should we? I'm starting to think that you might be fleas. Oh no, that was TJ. My bad, AJ. Oh yeah, I withdraw my accusation. I'd like to apologize. But hey, it's some of the best vanilla in the world is supposedly grown there. So maybe don't want to find out though. I don't want to find out. Oh, geez, Clyde, that Nacho beat me. Only one way to find out. I think we think too much alike. Because Samoa, both Western American, was the center of the whole Pacific. Samoa Katoa to control Samoa meant dominance over all the island. And that may have been the reason for the Tuitonga relocating there for a period of time. Looking at the timelines and some of the oral history, there seems to be a correlation there, Orator, that Pulemele Mound is around that time where Kaulfonua Fekai left Tonga, stayed in Samoa while there's been an assassination to the Tuitonga. Then you're finding the same things being built in Wallace and Futuna and other areas. So could be interesting. Hey, Clyde Moore, don't make fun of my tomatoes. That's what they told me when I was growing up in Tonga. They said it was an American tomato. I couldn't tell the difference. Tui Tonga was a pair up with the Tuifiti a lot to conquer Samoa, and why to describe trickery. We call it Tonga Fiti, Tonga Fiji, because the Tui Tonga and the Tuifiti would play mind games. I'm not familiar with that orator. That may be true. I'm not as familiar with those stories. That may be the case. I will say that on average, PC is kind of used as a negative term in Tonga, like anything that's not up to par, we tie, like kutufisi, mohefisi, mokofisi. I mean, that's usually not a positive thing from my experience, but I could be wrong. The soil was the main value back in the day. Samoa is very rocky. That's why their umu sits on the top. Plus, the Tongan trench saves Tonga from a lot of tsunami. That's an interesting. I never thought about that. That is one of the things that the Tonga Trench. Do you have any kind of links to that, Tevita? That'd be interesting to look at, because it's miraculous that Tonga wasn't wiped off the map with that Hunga Tonga and the Hunga Ha'apai eruption and the tsunami. I mean, for Pete's sake, they had people die thousands of miles away, but Tonga's right there, and I know it's on the other side, but still, I mean, that's interesting. There's a cave in Samoa that people would run and hide there. The Tongans invade Samoa. I think the cave is, well, here's the interesting thing. So my wife and my kids at the time, I was working on a startup, and we were looking to open up some offices in Samoa and American Samoa. And we were driving, I want to say it's in Samoa, driving on the road, and then everyone came out. And all these guys were standing on the side of the road. And I was like, you go through the first town, they all have their color of their lava and a white shirt standing on the side of the road. I said, oh, maybe something's going on in this town. Then you go to the next town, it's a different color and guys. And I was like, what in the world is going on here? So I pull over and I go up to one of the boys. He's standing up, and I go, hey, what's going on? And the boy goes, oh, it's the Sa. And I'm like, what? What's the Sa? And he goes, well, the Sa is the Sa. And I go, I understand that you're calling it the Sa, but what does the Sa mean? What's going on? He says, yes, everything right now is the Sa. And I was like, what in the world? So I try to get in my car and I try to leave. And then they say, no. You can't get back on the road. And I'm like, what? Let me guess. I can't get back on the road because of the Sa? And they're like, yes, because of the Sa. And then I found out later, after I'm probing and I'm asking another person, and they say, oh, during the Sa, everybody goes home and they say a prayer and you're not allowed to do anything. They'll let you drive through the town, but if you pull over, they won't let you get back on the road. And then I find out later, and maybe orator, maybe you can confirm this, but the Sa was instituted after the revolt. What's his name? The Tuitonga Talakai Faiki. When the revolt there, and then there was concern that Talakai Faiki would return and retaliate, even though he told Maria Toa, I'll come back as your friend. But the Sa was instituted for that, is when I was kind of digging in to try and find out what's the history behind the Sa. So yeah, kind of that description there, AJ, of the cave, running in to hide, and the instituting of the Sa to basically be a watch in case the Tongans were to return to retaliate. So not sure that maybe orator can confirm or deny. Let's see. Oh, there's no link if I know Hey, that's interesting. I mean, there has to be a reason. I know, we can always go to the all-encompassing answer. It's a blessing from God. But it is somewhat miraculous that Tonga, I mean, when that Hunga Tonga and Hunga Ha'apai volcano erupted, actually my My brother was there, and he actually called the whole family on, because you have a family chat on Facebook. In the middle of the call, he's like, "Dude, he just said the curtains in his house just blew off, and he thinks that the volcano is erupting again very violently." And then about a minute into the conversation, um, the what you call the connection. Sorry, I'm looking at the comments here, distracted me. We'll come to that comment real quick order. And then you're like, holy smokes, did Tonga just get wiped off the map? Because when you hear on how large the explosion was all over the news, and there's no way to call Tonga or anything, and then you find out, Mashi, only 3 people passed away, and 2 of them were tourists, so only 1 Tongan. And I was like, how miraculous is that? And then you hear someone drowning either in Asia or in the west coast of the United States, and you're like, how the heck did we not have more people pass away? Denied Marietoa wasn't bestowed till after the brothers conceded to their youngest brother to be. Oh, I was not aware of that. So Marietoa wasn't bestowed till after the brothers conceded to their youngest brother to be Marietoa. Interesting. I thought they would have given it to one of them, but I guess it's to a younger brother. Yeah, I'm not very familiar with that. We'll take that at face value, Orator. And that would be interesting. Funny how the Samoans were on standby for the Sawa, the Tongans was maybe they just thought, and hey, at the same time, my DNA says, let me see if I can pull it up here. My DNA does say that I have lots of Samoan blood in me. Let's see, 23. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Yeah, and it's surprisingly, it tells me where exactly in Samoa my ancestors came and lived on Samoa. And then I also got, some Melanesian through my dad, because he has Fijian blood as well. But at the end of the day, I mean, that's what I'm saying, man. We're all the same people. I mean, there's not too much of a difference between a Samoa and a Tongan. We were intermarrying, going back and forth for thousands of years. Let's pull up Tua Masanga Samoa. Where is that? How come it's there? We go. So, I guess I get a little bit from. Let's share this and bring it up. So when I did my DNA, then it looks like, heavily from this area of Samoa, which is, I think, the main island, right? Yeah, that's where Apia, that middle section. And then, so the thing is this Upolu, and then this is Savai'i or Savai'i Upolu. Aotearoa is not here to educate me. But yeah, so I do have some blood here, but heavily influenced from there. But yeah, kind of interesting. I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, we're all the same people when it all boils down to it. All right. This is why the Tongans got a bad name here to us. Yeah, well, I guess so, man. I'm the guy who just goes in, doesn't know what's going on, disturbing and disrupting the Sa. They should have been accusing me of ruffling feathers back then, even in Samoa. And that's where my ancestors were, in that Tuamasanga area. It was in that area we were driving through on the coast on the other side, and that's where I pulled over. So it could have been my own, third cousin who was trying to educate me about the Sa. Maybe no, they didn't have the Manua on there. They just had the Savai'i and Upolu. So the Tui Manua had no interest. Maybe they were disowning me. The Sa and the Pacific Islander gang from Long Beach, California, known as the SOS Sons of Samoa Crib Gang, aka Sa Gang. Oh, all right, all right. I know the Sons of Samoa. I didn't know that they go by the Sa name. I did not know that. Look, some additional background here. Yes, the brothers Tuna and Fata were the warriors to give. Yeah, I'm familiar with the Tuna and Fata, and from Tuitonga afterwards, neither would concede to hold the Malietoa. So after they both went to war with each. Interesting. Here's the interesting thing, though, Orator, is you know, Kaulufonua Fekai is like after this situation that you're sharing, if I remember correctly. So it's kind of interesting because Kaulufonua Fekai does come back and has a residence over there in Samoa. So I'm interested, and just like Talakai Faiki told him, he said, "Hey, I'll be back, but I'm going to be back as a friend now." So kind of interesting how our ancestors dealt with each other. Was the Hamonga originally the Paatonga or the Pulimele called the Paatonga? I don't know. That's a good question, Alexander. When we watched a video on one of our past lives of two Samoans, local Samoans in the area of the Pulimele, they share that their whole, what they grew up with is that they don't know where Pulimele, that word, comes from. Some people say that that's like an effort to literally pronunciate pyramid. It's one of the stories I've heard. No one seems to know where or why Pulimele is the name given to the mound, but that they referred to it as Paatonga. But the Pulimele was called the Paatonga by some of the oral history, even within Samoa, and that the Pulimele mound was a residence of the Tuitonga, and some of the oral history seems to suggest that that's where Kaulfonua Fekai resided, and there's some stories that the Tuitonga resided in Samoa for five generations, five Tuitongas before Tapu Osi returned, and Terea and Lomueki returned from Samoa, and then continue residing on Tongatapu from that point, and that the Tuiha Takalaua pretty much stayed on Tongatapu and managed the affairs on behalf of the Tuitonga. Once both were tired of fighting each other, Savea walked over and stood on both of them to claim the title. Malietoa Savea. Okay. So while they were busy fighting, looks like Savea was the smart guy, right? He waited for those two to exhaust themselves, and then he came in and took the title. So how far in between that order that the Savea guy took the Marietoa? Was that many years later, or shortly after? Kind of interesting that they would have remembered that phrase. And I'm wondering how Marietoa Savea, the brother, would have gotten that name, considering, did he fight with his other brothers or not? Because one would assume the two brothers would have gotten that name because they're the ones that actually fought. Tuna and Fata from Tokelau, I think. Well, not sure about that. Orator can check on that for us. Heard the brothers were from. Oh, here's another one. It's another question. So, negative, the brothers, they're from Upolu, stole Tuitonga anchor to turn it into their spiritual weapons to usurp Tuitonga. Okay. Looks like they're from Upolu. Not sure where some of the ideas that they came from Tokelau comes from. Interesting. I've never heard that personally. I thought that Paatonga was a Tongan fort in Samoa. Well, that's AJ. That's what the video of the locals in Samoa who grew up in that area. They said that their ancestors told them that area was called, where the Pulimele Mound is. That whole area and surrounding it was Paatonga, and that's where the Tuitonga resided, and that's where the Tongans would come back and forth from Samoa. So that's where the idea. I think that's what it's related to, AJ, in what you're mentioning there. Because that area was called Paatonga. But if you guys remember in that video in Tahiti, they called it the Pa Marai. And one of the comments from social media says that in those eastern Polynesia, that pa is kind of like a piece of land. And so pa could be one of the terms in ancient Polynesia that referred to land. So when you say pa Tonga, could be Tongan land. Pa Samoa would be Samoan land, and then pa Tonga could be the southern part of the land. Pa Tokelau, the northern part. That's what some of the comments have been. We've seen. I don't have a lot of verification on that. Descendant of Fafakitahi from Vava. I'm not sure what that comment is, Alex. I'm a little lost on what that means. Or this would have happened almost straight away. Neither brother would now to the bow. I'm showing bow to the other brother. Okay, interesting. Appreciate the confirmation there and the feedback, Orator. Koe pā tonga koe tai mia o ku pā ha taha. That is true. I mean, in Tonga, we would say pa, like pa'i, right? Get the pa'i on the back of the head, the slap. Interesting. Here's another comment. AJ says pa means Tongan wall. Could be. I mean, and that's what's interesting is it does seem to be connected to stone structures, right? So I could see a possibility there, AJ. Because the pa Tonga, just like in the PolyEyes, tied to rocks, the pa Marae, right, in the Tahiti is tied to rocks. So kind of interesting. Oh, Clyde Moore says that here in New Zealand, the Maori pa is, yeah, it seems, yeah, that could be the relation there. Seems to be a lot of overlap. So that's a real possibility, guys. That's an interesting one. I wonder if anyone's, I'm going to try and maybe I can do some searches online, see if anyone's done any research on that. I do have another video that we're going to look at, and this one is with our brother, King Afa. Let's see if I can remember where did I put King Afa, guys? Right now, I'm a little brain fried. Long day of meetings, and then the show here is. I only have one brain cell, and I think I may have used it at work, so I'm struggling a little bit. Looks like I put it on Facebook. So we'll come back here. Where is our Toko King Alpha here? Mahalo na loto mamahia King Alpha. Seems like some people may have not have been nice to King Alpha. Okay, here we go. Oh, internet is slow. Let's pause it. Turn on the sound. Go full screen. Share. All right, so let's see. Let's bring this up. Actually, let me change the view on that. Let's go like this, so we can have it bigger. Oh, King Afa is #1 for most loved and hated on TikTok. 100%, Vai Nicolo. It's a love-hate relationship. Like, King Afa says he's from Tonga. He does look a little familiar to me, but growing up in Tonga, I was kind of in my own Yahweh. And right on cue, Alexander, look at what AJ says. See, not the evidence of the love-hate relationship. In Tonga, they say, "Tu fata we're Tongan descent." Well, that's the thing that makes it complicated, Tevita, is because with the intermarrying between Tonga and Samoa, and like I said, it's the same. We use Tonga and Samoa because of how it's been divided through colonization, but really, like I mentioned earlier, people may disagree with it. The Samoa as a national identity really didn't exist until colonization, from my perspective, because there was never really a consistent unified ruler in Samoa over a significant piece of length of time. So that's my perspective on that, but who knows? King Afa said it's because he tells the adult version of our. Yeah, that's hey, let it. That's like we mentioned in the beginning of tonight. King Afa is, he's confident. is in his ideas and his thing, and he's willing to put it out there. I will say we did reach out to King Afa. Would love to have him on the show, just talk about his experience. Love to hear more of his ideas. But he does travel quite a bit, I guess. I mean, the guy's pretty successful, you know, and he kind of covers it a little bit in there. So yeah, I mean, that's the thing. He seems to have read a lot. He's been exposed to a lot of ideas. So interested to see Alex. Okay. Don't know where that came from, but very interesting, very interesting. I will say a lot of our Samoan brothers aren't very excited about King Afa and his ideas. AJ says he stopped watching his videos when he said Nukalofa is a Samoan word. Fair point. I mean, I've spoken to some people. I mean, the general acceptance of the word, like the very, the first layer, everything has layers. The first layer is to assume it's a Samoan word. I've also heard some deeper analysis that it may not be necessarily a Samoan word, that it's actually a Tongan word, but I wouldn't say that I know too much about that. 100% so right. Not till Mariato Tanu Mafiri, is the most stable reigning king of Samoa. Yeah, and I think that's in the video. I edited that piece out because in that page of the book that I read, it did mention that one of the, and I can't remember if that's the name, but they said that only one of the Tu'imanuas for a short period of time was able to unify or at least have some success in the Western Islands in Samoa. But after him, it even went back, and they say he's the only Tu'imanua that had some success. It's good when we arrive at the truth, but yeah, and that's the thing. The truth may have different paths and different perspectives to kind of help bring the pieces of the puzzle together. Before him was only short range from king to king, then 4 different kings backed by different Western countries. Yeah, that appreciate that context there, Orator. So last comment before getting to the video, I hear Nukalofa was a Samoan word too, named after the Samoan revolt as an ode to the relationship. Yeah, that's some. I mean, I've heard that it's actually both sides of the coin there, but I haven't dug deep into it. I've just heard those comments and different perspectives. But I don't have an official position on that yet. Okay, let's listen to, let's change our banner. All right, King Afa's fob video. Let's listen to our brother here.
How do you address that?
Oh, when Polynesians call me a fob,
Yeah,
fob is fresh off the boat,
right.
but they use it as a mockery
Mm-hmm.
to make fun of me and my English.
Right.
So these are Polynesians who make fun of someone that had just arrived from the island, fresh off the boat. That's what fob is. I have been fresh off the boat since I arrived in America. I brought Tongan tattoo into the Polynesian tattoo culture. I created value for Tongan tattoo and Polynesian tattoo in the marketplace. I brought in Polynesian design into the first urban clothing company and sold nationwide in America. I designed the tattoo for the Sons of Anarchy, 7-season #1 TV series in America. Tongan art for Miss Pageant, 2005. I've designed a Polynesian tattoo for a Super Bowl TV commercial. Yeah, I have been doing everything fresh off the boat.
Yeah.
So the mockery is they're making fun of my English, and I understand it. I'm not mad at them. They're proud of being Polynesian. They're proud of being Tongan and Samoan and being Maoris or Hawaiians. These are the angry Polynesians.
Right.
The Polynesians in America, in California,
Yeah.
on the West Coast, they want to sound black.
Right.
They say niggas. These Polynesians grew up in America.
This is what happens when you throw a punch, right? If you throw a punch, you better be ready for punches to come back your way. And after King Appa here kind of explained, kind of appeal to our emotional um, side of his position, then he turned around and gave a good uppercut. Maria.
Sound Americans. They make fun of their mother, their father, their uncles. Those who came from Tonga and those who came from Samoa. They sound like we're fresh off the boat. I have an accent. You know who else have an accent? Muhammad Ali, Bruce Lee, Bob Marley, Arnold Schwarzenegger,
Maria.
Nelson Mandela. You can close your eyes and you play a Nelson Mandela, you know it's Nelson Mandela. Morgan Freeman. So my accent, they call it fresh off the boat. I'm glad that they acknowledge that. Remember, they grew up here in America, or they grew up their whole life in New Zealand and Australia. See, I collect my English from Tonga, Fiji, New Zealand, Australia, Malaysia, Marianas, Hawaii, America. Different parts of America.
Yeah.
From different places that I lived at.
Yeah, I mean the guy's pretty confident, he boldly I admire that about him. What really stuck out to me in that video is at the end of the day, like he said, he's agree or disagree with his ideas, but the guy's added value wherever he's gone. So it does offer him some level of credence. I mean, I see some of the comments here. He said the Polynesians from Antarctica. Some people have kind of made fun of some of my positions. And I was like, yeah, I'm sure some of my positions are wild and out there, but I do admire someone at least standing there and throwing out his positions. That doesn't mean anything is every idea that's thrown out there is guaranteed, right? That did crack me up, Sila Malo, on that part where I said that's where after he's like, oh, these guys made fun of me for being fob, make fun of, and you kind of, it's like, oh, he's taking like an emotional appeal, and then immediately after that he unwrapped his hands and started throwing haymakers, saying, the Polynesians in America want to be niggas, but that's a fair criticism. Sometimes, we're a little too comfortable to let go of our Polynesian attributes to tag on to the pop culture, but that's across the board. I guess every ethnic background is doing that. That seems to be more of an overall American culture, because Palangis do it, Asians do it. But I think the reason why this video kind of stuck out to me is you can have outlandish ideas. Not every idea is out there, but I think I selected this video for today's podcast because it was tied to our topic in the beginning. We want ideas to compete, we want to throw it out there, but the guy made some strong points, right? You can make fun of my accent, my selection of words, but he's a well-known and respected individual in the tattoo community, bringing it in from mainstream Tongan culture, kind of with our full embrace of Christianity. We let go certain things, and tattooing is one of them. And the guy's been involved in pulp culture things, TV. That's why I said, for all intents and purposes, he's pretty successful, and his confidence in what he believes and what he says, interesting. I just thought that was an interesting thing to say. And we're in a country that is all immigrants, and I think it's a little shallow to let me put it this way. If your only critique of the man is his accent and that he's fresh off the boat, he must have some pretty strong positions if that's all we can come back with to throw at him. And a guy like him seems like throwing those things at him doesn't seem to bother him too much. But he will throw haymakers back if you throw that at him. So beware, and be careful on the accusations you send out there. All right, we are down to the last topic of the evening. So let me pull it up. So, as always, we've covered a lot of ground. Been some great comments, and you know, everybody has different ideas, and I appreciate everyone's comments. That's what we want. The next, actually, we might have two sections. We'll look at the time, right? We'll look at the time here, and we're going to go through a study first. And we're going to walk through some of the highlights of that study. Shoot, where is this thing? Did I close it? Shit. Oh, no, here it is. Oh, one of them days. Share screen. Let's go to window. That guy. Let's share that. All right. So we're going to walk through some points here in a study, another study that was done on the, ruins in Tonga and kind of the overall aspect of Tonga and the Tui Tonga Empire. So we're going to just walk through this study. I just highlighted a few points that we want to talk about. Obviously, this is Heketa. This is where the Ha'amonga Maui is. There's also a Langi there. It's recognized at this time, or accepted, that Momo Tuitatui were located there. As we shared from our position, the Ha'amonga was likely built well before Momo and Tuitatui, though a lot of the academia seems to believe that Tuitatui and Momo built the Ha'amonga. We don't take that position. We think the Ha'amonga predates the Tuitonga, possibly, and it may be more in the Tangaloa timeline. But we're going to walk through some of the comments in this study. We'll just kind of stop there for commentary and discussions as we go through it. Looks like confidence stems from knowledge. What sorts the wheat from the chaff? In the facts detail one brings to an argument. Otherwise, anything else just by fair point. And King Afa seems to have a lot of confidence in there. Agree. I didn't realize what everybody was kind of mentioning on the sound. But yes, it's a kahi, and it's like it is kind of like I see some of the comments. I didn't make sense, but yes, it did sound like a kahi, which is kind of like my wife, I guess she says she calls it like the Tongan growl. Well, basically what Water Bear said. That's what my wife calls it. Sweet. All right. So the name of this study is Stone Architecture, Monumentality, and the Rise of the Early Tongan Chiefdom. So I typically don't like the word chiefdom. Yes, Clydemore, the kahi is closely related to a pa'i, right? Either you get a pa'i for the kahi, or you're kahiing because you're going to pa'i someone. But I agree. There's a direct correlation between the kahi and the pa'i, and the correlation can go both directions. I typically don't like the word chiefdom in describing Tonga and the Tui Tonga, because it was more of a kingly line and it was more of an empire. When I say chiefdom, seems that's just a personal preference. Chiefdom is more like localized small leadership, not necessarily a vast one. You guys are funny. Can't even concentrate on the study. This is the serious stuff, guys, and you guys are cracking me up in the comments. Monumental construction is commonly associated with the rise of complex societies and frequently supported the ceremonies and the ideologies that were instrumental in the creation of a new social order. Now, This is that sentence right there is one of the reasons why we heavily regard ruins, right? Because ruins, especially monuments of large scale, is a physical representation of the complexity of a society. This is why the Mayans have great ruins. This is why the Egyptians have great ruins. This is why Rome has ruins. Every major civilization that had complexity, a physical representation of that complexity are the monuments that were built by those civilizations. This is why we say the monuments are important. Some people just say, some of the feedback we usually get from the Tui Polotu or the Tui Manua position is monuments don't matter. It's the oral history. And we're like, well, you may be true, but I'm not convinced because every other major civilization that had concentrated power over vast distances had monuments. And so when you don't have those significant monuments, it makes it you can't judge people for not believing in a sophisticated vast empire when we don't have sophisticated monuments. And that's what that first sentence in the study is saying. This is why they're studying the Tongan monuments, because it is a pretty straightforward evidence of a sophisticated society. That's hilarious. No seas pendejo, cabrón. Yeah, don't be a blah, little boy. Yeah, your dad, yeah. Diga a tu papá que él tiene un razón ahí. What bears. Escúchalo. Anyways. All right, coming back here. Creation of a new social order. Recent fieldwork in Heketa and eastern Tongatapu recorded stone-built platforms for houses and seats and a 3-tiered tomb and a trilithon. Tongan tradition and archaeology combined to show that these were the setting for new ceremonies instituted by the emergent Tuitonga lineage in the 14th century AD as they laid foundations of the early Tongan chiefdom. So, once again, we agree with this position. Oral history or Tongan tradition brings its value. When you bring in an oral tradition, we recognize that that has potential in it, and we don't just disregard oral history. But to base everything and all things only on oral history has certain weaknesses, because oral history can be contradicting within itself. It may have competing oral histories that make it complicated, and that's assuming that one can properly interpret the oral history. Now, when you have tradition, oral history, and archaeology, then that combination has a lot more strength, more credibility. Now, is that a smoking gun? Well, you'll never ever have a smoking gun, but that's very, very convincing when you do have it. Hey, Brown Monk, every time I go here and go get myself some tacos or a burrito, the micos think I'm a mico. I speak Spanish. I serve the Spanish speaking mission. And so, they inevitably start speaking to me in Spanish. So I just answer back, and my wife just looks at me and she goes, they think you're Mexican. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. He goes, why don't you tell them you're not Mexican? Because I just want my burrito. I really don't feel like I have to confirm to them that I'm Polynesian. And if I understand them and they can understand me and they want to speak in Spanish, we'll dance in Spanish. Nothing wrong with that. But yes, Brown Monk. We'll go through here. There's some question marks about what they actually derive. Like, for example, they seem to indicate that they think that the drinking of the kava may have been initiated there. Obviously, we have our own um, perceptions on that. So let's scroll down. I'm just going to go through some of the highlighted areas. Um, in the study, it says complex societies developed in many parts of Oceania at the same time, particularly in Hawaii, in the Hawaiian Islands. But only Tonga developed a political system that encompassed an entire archipelago, and it has recently been considered, like Hawaii, to be a primary state. Now, obviously, from the academia position, they think that the Tuitonga is very young. Now that we're doing some of the scannings, and also with the work of Tevita Fale, the Tuitonga seems to be much older from our perspective. But the key point is this: there are little to no examples of a unified primary state in Polynesia. Okay, just from observation. The only two examples they can find are the Hawaiian Islands, which through Kamehameha, which is very, very early, um, and Tonga. And, unless we find more evidence that Hawaii was a self governing, unified country that had a national identity before Kamehameha the Great, there is no real evidence of that yet. But one would assume there's a reason why the Hawaiian Islands were not unified and they needed Kamehameha to unify them, which led to the unification in Hawaii. But that is hundreds and thousands of years before the Tuitonga has established. And we take the position that the Tuitonga really, in many ways, like what we mentioned earlier, some of the Tuitongas were marrying Hawaiians, and that Hawaii was part of the Polynesian nation that was with a capital in Tonga. For this reason, and because of the relatively recent age, the development of the Tongan chiefdom is important for understanding the process of political centralization and the role of elite architecture, especially monumental structures, in the emergence of a social complexity. Once again, monuments, ruins, archaeological evidence are a physical representation of a complex society, and a complex society is needed to establish, run, and maintain a government structure that spans over thousands of miles and covers millions of square miles. Tongan traditions consistently hold that the first center with the chiefly and monumental stone architecture was built at Heketa, in eastern Tongatapu before the removal of the chiefdom to Labaha 2 to 3 generations later. So that's interesting. I don't have the detail that's tied into that just yet. But I believe there are other langis but may just be earthen based, but maybe there may be some truth to this statement that the first stone based langis may have been there. But as some of our viewers have shared, there are langis in Ha'apai and Wava'u and in other areas. I'm not too familiar with that, but we'll try and dig into that a little bit more. Water Bears Tongan Mom from Vaini Doves. I love that name. I've always loved that name. Mexican dad from Tijuana. It's a terrible mix of disaster, Vaini Vare, and hey, or maybe it's the perfect mix, Water Bears. I don't know. Just the right amount of this and that, and you get something pretty awesome. But that's pretty cool. Malo. So once again, we'll dig into this a little bit more, maybe on future episodes. But I just want to kind of highlight the specific areas here that seem to potentially have some value for a conversation. Once again, these are just maps of Hegeta, New Toa. What's interesting in my other videos and also on Tevita Fale's website, in this area, I believe there's Kolonga, I want to say right here, there is a ha'amonga in the ground, an earth-based ha'amonga that was built before the stone one was built. So that's another interesting thing there to just kind of keep in mind. Obviously, this is La Paja Mua. This is and there's actually another one. They have the idea that it went straight from Heketa to La Paja, but actually there's a Langi in Nukuleka. There's one or two Tuitongas that live in Nukuleka before they go to La Paja. So just to kind of keep that in mind. Let's see. Boom, skimming down here. These are kind of like where they did the test pits for some of the archaeological findings that they had. We're not too concerned with the data points. That's the Ha'amonga. Is that it? I thought I highlighted something else down here, but maybe that was just the main points that I wanted to highlight. Yeah, these are just data points. Oh no, there's some more. And this was kind of driven by the kava ceremony. The formal kava circle, therefore, comprises the assemblage of the representative of the ancestors, the first holders of the titles, of whom the Tuitonga was preeminent as a descendant of the god Tangaloa Eitu Matupua. Once again, I think I may have highlighted this just to kind of show that, Tangaloa Eitu Matupua is not the Tu'imanua. Though the Tu'imanua seems they tried. I'm not very clear on how the Tu'imanua separates from Tangaloa, on whether the Tu'imanua position is the Tangaloa was replaced by the Tu'imanua, or if the Tangaloa title is different. It's a little bit of lack of clarity there for me. The use of kava is attributed to the time of the 10th Tuitonga Momo, when its potent effects were discovered on Eweki Island. See, I don't know where this kind of comes from, because obviously the first Tuitonga was put into a kava bowl. They put the leaves and stuff. But from our understanding, the kava ceremony predates Momo and Tuitatui, and it's much older than that. I'm not sure. They cite Gifford here, which I'm assuming is, kind of like some of the book references. Is this something documented? Somebody just asked some random person a story and they validated and said, yeah, that's when the kava ceremony started. Not sure about that. Doesn't seem to make sense. The development of the kava ceremony Heketa is significant as it reveals the emergence of a chiefly court, Falefa. Once again, Falefa was established with Aho'eitu well before this timeline. Like I said, I think the Heketa is the 1, 2, 3, 4th. It's the 4th settlement. So there were 3 settlements of the Tuitonga before Heketa. The Falefa predated going to Heketa, right? That was instituted by Tangaloa as basically like a type of council, or parliament type structure for the Tuitonga for council. And so it does. This is where it kind of gets confusing for me. Every time the academics try to get into the oral history, it just gets weird. It's more helpful when they just stick to the data and not try to mix the oral history with the data. The scientists and the academia should just stick to the data. Let the Polynesians kind of manage and navigate through the oral history, and then find the overlaps with the data. But I don't know. It just gets more confusing when the academics try to get into oral history when they do better just with the data points from my perspective. Jose, I think Aho'eitu is not the first Tuitonga. Maybe. I mean, the oral history is pretty consensus across the board. Aho'eitu was the first Tuitonga. Do we believe that Aho'eitu was the first paramount king over the Polynesian nation or empire? No. We believe that Tangaloa managed or established a big portion of the Polynesian nation / empire, and that the Tuitonga took over that. And so there could be a case that Aho Etu was not, the Tuitonga was not the only establishment of a unifying culture and society and scientific knowledge and religious basis. Interesting. So yeah, Ezra, every island in Tonga occupied had to pay nasi to the king, right? Yes, and they talk about it here, but I think they have this messed up. Inasi is not first fruits. There were two main tributes that were offered to the Tuitonga. Inasi was more of a tax, right? That was like a tax, an annual tax where you provided it. And it was actually, according to Daniel Fale, it was a tax, but also offered an opportunity for the exchange of goods as they were brought to Tonga, right? It seems to be kind of clear that the Samoans were the best stone workers and had a lot of great axes, stone axes, and that was kind of one of the things they brought, including some mats, and that was exchanges and given to other people who brought tribute throughout the empire. And then what the other parts of the empire brought, whether it was new types of crop, animal, or other type of natural resource, was then shared with the Samoans and the Tongans and everyone else. There was kind of an exchange of goods that happened at the same time. So yeah, so this is one of the things, like we're talking about the first fruits or inasi. Once again, it seems like every time they kind of dive into the oral history, the academics just suffer. But when they provide just the data, when they're just looking at dates, they just look at certain parts of analysis, scientific analysis, seems to be helpful. But once they get into the oral history, they kind of stumble over themselves. Like right here, like I said, the inasi, the kava ceremony, and when that's instituted, the inasi being the first fruits, that's polo polo. Inasi, where the first fruits are brought to the Tuitonga as tribute. The inasi is kind of closer to a tax, right? And that's why it's called a share or a portion, because it's not the first fruits, it's just the portion that's owed, the tribute that's owed. Was recurring large-scale and integrative ceremony attended by chiefs and people from all over Tonga that was held annually or twice yearly at the time of the yam planting. So this is the polo polo, right? Is the second one, where it's twice a year, and the harvesting of the early yams. At the Inasi, the Tuitonga received tribute of offerings of yams and other produce and valuables on behalf of the god Hikuleo. Once again, we agree this is the god that we say brought our ancestors into the Polynesian area, into the Pacific, and guided us. And that is the unified, universally recognized Tangaloa as a god seems to be a deviation from the original recognition of Hikuleo, which is why, expressed the position that, recognizing of Tangaloa and of the Tuitonga as deity or demigods is a corruption of the early religion. On behalf of the god Hikuleo, to obtain successful food yields and avert misfortune in the coming year, Hikuleo was viewed as the representative of the other gods. That's not kind of what I grew up with. Hikuleo was kind of, well, I guess a representative, but it was the supreme god with oversight of the civil and sacred affairs of Tonga. So once again, that's another example when the academics get into the oral history, it just gets wonky. It's just nicer when they stay with the data. Looks like we have some comments. Brown Monk, Polynesian oral history is told like Bible stories, lots of 100%. 100%. And you can either grossly misinterpret them, or with the right context, you can get some great insight into the historical beliefs of the ancient Polynesians. It was said that Ka'ulufonua Fekai gave Vaini their memorable Vaini Vale because they're responsible for not protecting his father as he was bathing the pond. Wow. Okay. I'm not familiar with that. That's one could see how that name would stick there, George, right? when the Tuitonga, when the Tuitonga is assassinated under your care, and the son is absolutely, frustrated with you, I could see how that name could stick. I mean, because that seems to be a pretty significant event in Polynesian history, because that led to, obviously, um, Kaulfo Fekai chasing the assassins all the way to Wallace and Futuna, right? Bringing them back to Tonga. Pretty gruesome. Not trying to be gruesome, but brings them back to Tonga. A lot of people say, oh, he drank their blood. Yeah, partially true. What he did was he knocked out all of their teeth, then had them chew the kava with their gums, right? And then made the kava, and obviously there'd be blood in there if your teeth had just been knocked out. And then drink the kava. That's that could be seen as drinking their blood, but not drinking it directly, in an indirect manner. And then, Kaulfo no Fekai establishes the Tuiha Takalaua. And then, as some oral history says, Kaulfo no Fekai moves to Samoa, and he's, the Tuitonga resides there for 5 years. One would assume, with that chaos that came out of the assassination, maybe he felt it was necessary to exercise military power to reinforce dominance, because it seems before that the dominance was, or the loyalty was, not through military conquest. It was through religious, right, recognition of the Tuitonga as being a demigod representative of Hikuleo, and also through strategic marriage and alliance with people of influence throughout Polynesia. Ezra, I just started learning the history of my father's side, and it is very similar to the South Americas. Any links where I can learn more? Yes, Ezra, that's actually one of the positions we hold pretty strongly, is that Polynesians came from the Americas. I'm going to shoot here a website. This is thfalid.com. A lot of the articles there related to that, but glad you could join us, Toko. Always great to have new people join, and check out that website. You can also look up Tevita H. Fale on Facebook. I see that you're joining us from Facebook. He does have a Facebook page, and he has a bunch of articles that are posted there. The Polynesian Eyes podcast is built off of Tevita H. Fale's designs and history. So check that out, Ezra. Mahalo, Togo. Thank you for joining us. A bit behind here, but it's crazy hearing him say Tapu Tapu Atea is the most sacred place in Polynesia. But he said, I mean, it's ironic, right? It's ironic. But once again, I mean, this is one of the challenges of oral history, right? Is there are competing ideas and conflicting ideas. And in that segment on Fattable, that's why we said, so which cradle is the real cradle, right? Because you have certain people from Fiji saying Fiji is the cradle of Polynesia. We have Samoans saying it's Samoa. We have Tongans saying Tonga. Now we have the Tahitians. I'm sure if we continue asking around, there'll probably be 10 more cradles, right? But that's kind of a funny point there. Yeah, we'll definitely ask Daniel. We're looking forward to having him. The biggest challenge of having Daniel, he is residing in Tonga, is internet connectivity. Maybe if we're able to raise some funds in the future, we can order him some Starlink, so he can have some reliable internet, so he could join us consistently. There's a lot of cave Anahulu. There's also a cave Anahulu leads all the way, comes out in. Yeah, that's interesting. I've been to the Anahulu cave right in Tonga when I was growing up in Tonga. One of my favorite places to go swimming. And there's the beach out there with I think there's a cemetery out there as well. Um, Interesting. I've never gone through there, but wouldn't be surprised. God loves you. That comes out there. Do you know if there's any videos that show that? I think that would be an interesting video to look at. Tui, I mean Nomuka. I don't know if you're being serious or not. I don't know much about that. Maybe it is, but wouldn't be surprised, right? Everyone, that's the problem. If you just go by oral history alone, there's cradles everywhere. All right, let's see if we can get through this segment here of the show. According to tradition, the decision to move the chiefdom from Heketa to La Paja was to provide a safe anchorage for the canoes of the 12th Tuitonga Talatama due to the danger posed to the craft by exposed limestone coast. Tongan sources further detail and specify that the canoes at risk were named vessels sacred to the god Hikuleo, which were particular responsibility of the Tuitonga. As I mentioned, they first go to not Talasiu. I'm forgetting it, guys. You know, right there by Talapo'o, that small where they found the Lapita pottery. Some people call it Talasiu, but it's not. Nukureka, sorry. Nukureka. So they go there before they go to La Paja. Right. Once again, Hikuleo was also recognized as the proprietor of the land. That is somewhat agreeable in the sense that Hikuleo led the Tangaloa to Tonga and therefore would be the proprietor of the land. A popular theory that the Trilithon Ha'amonga Amaui was an astronomical observatory has not, when tested, received support. Once again, you know, this is where the oral history conflicts with this scientific observation. Is they're saying that the Ha'amonga doesn't have any astronomical value, but you know, Devita H. Fale has spent a lot of time and energy on that. There's actual a constellation in the sky that is critical for navigating not only in the southern hemisphere but also in the northern hemisphere. Yeah, Tui, what happened? That's pretty funny. Is where the Namu ate the horse alive. At least that's how my aunt roasted her husband. That's the funny thing about every village in Tonga, and it's probably the same in Samoa and throughout Polynesia. Every village has a story, right? And as George is sharing here, Galfo Nofekai also gave Fola a nickname because his father's assassination, but I would rather not say it. All right. Kaulfo Nofekai was a pretty serious dude. He was giving memes out before memes were a thing. So once here's the Inasi as observed by Captain Cook, right? So it's a big old thing, took multiple days and weeks, you know, thousands, tens of thousands of offerings to the Tuitonga. So I think that may be it, guys. So once again, I mean, this study is once again reinforcing why we emphasize ruins so much. It's just let's just call it a best practice, right? It's a way to anchor and to corroborate or to at least help put in focus the oral history, right? When they align, when they conflict, then you have to do some, you know, some critical thinking and maybe some additional research when things conflict. But when they align, they make a theory, an idea, or a position much more reliable. And so this is one of many. We have multiple other studies that we will continue to share on different shows. But once again, here's another quote unquote evidence, right? Beyond oral history and a family tree of the reality and the significance and the sophistication of the Tuitonga Empire and why we as hosts of this podcast take that position and allow others to critique it, have others to, you know, take it further in their research or to, you know, do as they wish, throw it in the trash. But we will present what we present and have the ideas compete. Ruins, monuments, be the piece of pottery. Please share with the top. Well, and that's a fair point, George. We really believe in that. You know, the hard thing about the pottery for the lapita is, once again, I've used this example before. If using a piece of pottery as a source of origin for a civilization would be the equivalent of 5,000 years from now, if the United States doesn't exist and they come and do excavations and find 80% of the things made in China, and then they'll say, oh, America came from China because we found endless archaeological evidence that Chinese tools and pottery and blah, blah, blah came from China. So America comes from China. When it couldn't be further from the truth, right? America is the polar opposite of China in many ways. So that is kind of the criticism that we have of the Lapita pottery. And, you know, they track it where it comes from. You can track that the products come from China and they probably were ported here and there before they got here and blah, 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 and come up with the theory. So we on the Polynesian Eyes podcast think that the ruins, the social structure, the astronomical knowledge, the cultural evidence and practices, the navigating or seafaring, when you look at those things, the pillars, the religious beliefs, the pillars of a civilization are a better indicator of the origin of the civilization than pottery, right? And so that is also true of America. The idea of the American civilization is not expressed through Chinese goods that are abundant in the United States. It is found in the political structure, the religious tradition, the social alignment, and also on the basic unifying principles that makes America America. That is how you can understand the origin and the sophistication of the American culture and civilization, and not through Chinese goods. I don't know. Maybe that's helpful for some people to kind of put it in that perspective. Queen Salote gave the Vine name for her names because they didn't acknowledge her when she came by their village. That's what I heard. Oh, see? Competing oral histories. We will try and find out. You know, or maybe it could be that Queen Salote reinforced those. Who knows? But that's a good point. Malo Water Bears. We're breaking barriers. And just I've never loaded. Is that just 25 just on YouTube? Togo? Let me know, because I'm wondering if that's what you're seeing, if it's showing everyone on your end as viewing. So yeah, let's go from there. All right, Tui has another comment. Masi. Oh Yahweh, this is the kind of stuff that's gonna get me in trouble, guys. Don't get me in trouble. One thing is for sure, no matter the origin, the nickname, we all can agree it to be true. Oh, Yahweh. Oh, that is funny. Is Queen Salote upset at Vaini like Ulfunofek? I wonder why. Yeah, like Lymore said, maybe there's a pattern there. All right, guys. Well, I think that you know what? There is one more video. I was going to say it ends. We usually try to close it out at 3 hours. We try to limit to that, but we do have a lot of Usos joining us tonight, which we love. We appreciate it. we want everybody to join. So there is a topic that I think is, be kind of near and dear to our Samoan brothers and sisters. If I can find it, but it's also relevant to all of us. And let me see where it is. Well, there's the notes. Where did we put you? Oh yeah, we're getting little exhausted, I guess. I thought it was on Facebook. Let's go YouTube then. Watch later. Oh, it's on YouTube. Oh, no, I need to escape. Sorry, guys. I've got it open on the wrong. Let's stop sharing. Let's go to YouTube. And then we'll share it real quick. All right. How have I think I'm running out of steam. I think I'm running out of steam here. So this will be our last topic. What? No. Not that one. Oh, yeah. All right. It's the right thing, but on the wrong window. There we go. Hallelujah. Okay, so perfect. Yeah, so 25 on YouTube. So yeah, not 100%. All right. So this is kind of tight. I mean, I growing up in Tonga, loved playing rugby, got exposed to rugby league through the village. Rugby union was through high school and the middle school at Tonga Side School, but got exposed to rugby league in the village competition. But there's always been I think it's just a Polynesian thing. At first, I thought it's just the Tongans, but it seems to be a Polynesian Achilles heel. But Samoa Rugby Union is going through a financial crisis. Tonga Rugby Union, these guys, at least this one's like every 7 years. I feel like Tonga, it's like every year. But this is kind of hitting the news. Oh yeah, 100% George, 100%. Mua Saints all day. That place, that club has a special place in my heart. Mahanga, I don't know if he's still alive. Invited me to come out. Really changed my life because I played on the national team. I was able to captain the national team against Australia, who was touring. Got my first contract offer while still in high school, and that opened up opportunities for me to, other areas and going to Hawaii for football at St. Louis. Hey, oh yeah, wait, my bad, Monk. Monk is giving me a big body in the back of the head. He said, not allowed. Eh? Tapwe mohe. So, but yeah. So Mua Saints, I played for the Mua Saints. This was the under 16 because I was still young and in high school. What year would it have been? 2000, 2001. But yeah, I mean, in the late 80s, mid to early, and even into the late 90s, Mua Saints were super dominant. And we were super dominant when Tataka Motonga and Lapaha played together. Those are like the two siblings, right? And Talasiu is the smaller sibling, but the two main siblings, when Tataka Motonga and Lapaha formed one team, they were super dominant. They're like Tuna Fata, right? And then they couldn't get along, right? If the Tataka Motonga guy was chosen to be captain, all the Lapaha guys were angry. And if the Lapaha guy was chosen to be captain, the Tataka Motonga guys were angry. And so we couldn't get along. And so the team split into two. with the Muasain stayed with the Motonga, and then Lapaha Knights was developed. And, between those two teams would win every once in a while. But like Savea, Ha'ateho, pretty much, was it the Spartans? I think was the name of that team. They became super dominant after the Muasain split. There we go. So there's Tevita saying was it Teo Faiva against Ha'ateho in the 2000s. Actually, I was there. That big one where they were like throwing rocks, but it was a lot of the Ha'ateho guys were playing for the Havelu Bulldogs, I think, because Ha'ateho, I think, was like sanctioned where they weren't allowed to compete, if I remember correctly, Tevita. But yeah, anyways, that woke me up a little bit. Yeah, I was there in the middle of the crowd. That was like a battle. It was going back and forth. Yeah, that was insane. That was like my first real exposure to like a large scale fight where you're talking like, over, and it was like planned too. It was orchestrated. I mean, the Mua guys were there to watch the game, but it seemed like the Ha'ateho people were prepared. They had like pipes and rocks and all kinds of stuff. It's kind of interesting. Anyways, coming back here, we'll watch this video. They're kind of talking about the Toa Samoa and the financial challenges that they're going through. And I just want to talk like that's not unique to Samoa. And actually the fact that it's only every 7 years, much better than what Tonga kind of goes through. But let's just kind of listen to this discussion here.
A big month of sport with the Olympics on, but for many of our Pacific rugby players, the international season kicks off with the start of the Pacific Nations Cup, PNC in Suva, on August the 23rd. Now that's when Manu Samoa take on Fiji as it continues to build in this Rugby World Cup cycle. Now the problem is, money required to remain competitive is running low. And so Manu Samoa had announced it will not be going on an end-of-year Northern Hemisphere tour unless World Rugby coughs up more money. It's the eternal problem, really, for rugby in the Pacific. And here to give his view is former Manu Samoa rugby captain, Mulitalo Filippo Levi. Thank you for joining us on the show.
No worries. Thank you for having me here.
Well, the announcement earlier that Manu Samoa wouldn't be going on that tour caused a lot of, talk online, didn't it? A lot of people were feeling quite emotional about that, really.
Yeah, it seems to be the same patterns every year. I remember 7 years ago, but 2016-17, former Prime Minister Tulepa, the chairman of Samoa Rugby, mentioned the same thing, saying that we're going to go bankrupt. We need money from World Rugby to, keep us afloat, keep Samoa Rugby afloat. And 7 years later, the same thing is happening. So I need to ask the question: why is it happening? Why is this continue the same patterns? And so we need to really look at that, more deeply, because I know there's been some development in Samoa of late.
Okay, so on Samoa TV yesterday, the chair of Lakapi Samoa, Tui Laepa, announced a new game plan. What's happening?
Yeah, so I'm not surprised. I mean, yeah, he put something out, puts an announcement out on TV and all across the media, and to say that we're running out of money, and all of a sudden there's another change of plan. And so saying that now they're going to be fundraising. So
they will. Manu Samoa will be going on this tour.
Well, I'm not sure, because then again, how much do they need to go for the tour? How much do they need World Rugby to help out? So this month is the 100 years anniversary of Lakapi Samoa, or Samoa Rugby Union, and also these other teams in Samoa, like the Marist Brothers, have 100 years anniversary of late. So there's an opportunity for Samoa to get a bit of revenue for the tour. So in some ways, yes, it's good, but is it going to be enough to cover the tour?
Okay, well, he was Tui Laepa was earlier blaming World Rugby for them being in the situation. They're saying no, Samoa Rugby Union should be managing their money better. But who is to blame, really?
Look, you need to look at the whole picture. I mean, I think I've been involved in Manu Samoa, from the 2000s, and leaving the organisation, things have not changed. So you need to ask, why is it happening? Do we need to change the top? Do we need to remove the chairman of Tulepa? Do we need to bring in new blood? Because Samoa, we've got so much knowledgeable people in Samoa. A lot of people have business acumen, that we can put in there, because Samoa needs to be run like a business. At the moment, we're running at a loss, and it's been happening for a while now.
So you're putting you're putting the blame really at the top. You're saying it should be changing Tui Laepa from the top.
There has to be a change somewhere. Okay, so I'm sick of seeing the same problems and the same issues that come up, and this could be a a strategic call from Tulepa. You know, he's been in the game for a long time, for decades, so he knows how it works. So we needed someone like him, but also we need fresh blood in there to bring a different perspective, because you're getting the same sort of patterns every year.
And it's really the game for Samoa that's really suffering, isn't it? All this talent there that's looking elsewhere.
Look, Samoa has the talent. Okay, Samoa have the people. All the answers are in Samoa. Okay, so if we're calling out to rugby to help us out with financial needs, and World Rugby actually saying a few days later, pointing the blame back in Samoa Rugby, well, that could be Samoa. So there's, so you've got this finger pointing, but we actually need to find solutions. And, in a way you can find solutions, either you change the whole board, or the whole leadership model, and then bring in fresh blood, or find other ways, or find sponsors, because I know sponsors have left, and also the government are no longer funding the Lakabi Samoa, because they don't see a need there.
Okay, very quickly. So we're speaking of money.
Please.
Pacifica Medical Association, taking a big stake in owning Moana. How good is that for the players or the game?
It's it's very new for having an association. To you usually get a private entity they're private, but the association that can fund Pacific the rugby team Moana. I think it's a great thing, because you're able to have Moana again for another year, another 2 or 3. So it's going to be really interesting what happens next with Ari Savia coming in. That's going to add a lot of experience to the young guys and a couple of signings from Samoa who have come in. So that's great for One Pacifica. And so what I want to see now is what happens to Manu Samoa, the Tongan team, Fijian team, with the other Pacific nations. What's the offset from that?
And on that note, PNC, who are you picking to win?
Sorry, PNC. Well, trick question. I mean, the favorites are Fiji.
Okay.
Because they've shown their form of the last few years. But always close to Manu Samoa, so I hope they can, try their best, and with all the things surrounding them, they can do their best and win their games.
Litano, thank you for joining.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why this sticks out to me is this is not a uniquely Samoan problem, right? This seems to be, and it's not even just a Polynesian problem. This is a rugby union problem, right? I mean, for Pete's sake, New Zealand Rugby Union had to be basically acquired by a private investment firm. So even New Zealand Rugby Union is not financially stable, right? And they're running at a loss. We look at the Wallabies. The Wallabies are suffering. They're bleeding money. And so it just seems that it's a sophisticated problem that World Rugby has an issue. And I don't know exactly how to solve it, but this is not a situation that Polynesian teams are going to resolve on their own. Granted, they have their own challenges, right, with the corruption and how things are spent, how the funds are utilized. They can't even get access to the larger games to play against New Zealand and Australia because New Zealand and Australia are suffering for money. I mean, it just seems like this whole rugby union thing is just suffering tremendously financially, and that's a problem all on its own. The other thing too is that at the local level for the clubs, these are the things that, the corruption I've seen. I'm not sure about Samoa Rugby Union, but Tonga Rugby Union, they have cleaned house, or at least supposedly cleaned house, multiple times. Change the leadership, change the coaching, change everything, right? And still get the same outcome. Still bankrupt, still corruption runs rampant, and there's just issues all over the place. So, I mean, to me, this is a bigger problem. I think the rugby union product needs to be looked at, right? They do great at the Rugby World Cup on the big scale every 4 years. The Rugby World Cup seems to be tremendously successful, but in between each World Cup, they seem to be bleeding money. So there's a significant challenge there. Now, what World Rugby needs to worry about in not spending money, and they need to start thinking about forking out more money to Samoa, Tonga, and Fiji, is the talent that they're going to lose. Their product is already suffering, with the injection of Polynesian talent. But if they lose Samoan, Tongan, and Fijian talent to rugby league, the rugby union product is going to suffer even more. The most exciting players in any of the competitions, high probability you're looking at a Polynesian player, right? Or multiple Polynesian players. And so, World Rugby better wake up, if they don't figure this out, and at the very least, if they don't take the checkbook out and start writing more checks, if they just sit there and say, oh, it's Tonga Rugby Union's fault. Because Tonga Rugby Union just went through this a year and a half ago, where they basically told World Rugby, hey, we got no money, we can't do anything. And World Rugby goes out, you guys are going to have to figure it out. And then Tonga Rugby Union goes, all right, then I guess we're just shutting things down. And then lo and behold, World Rugby came around the corner, wrote a big fat check, right? But they said, oh, we're not going to write you a check until you show us the receipts. Show us the receipts. And Tonga Rugby Union goes, yeah, we don't have any receipts, but we spent it to build the game in Tonga, right? And at the end of the day, World Rugby wrote the check and sent it over, because the reality is Polynesia is where the largest concentration of talent is. It's the highest probability to invest your dollars and get a superstar that'll give you a return, that will attract eyeballs and build the game in the professional level. So as far as I'm concerned, World Rugby is probably going to end up writing Samoan Rugby Union a big fat check. And it's if they're smart, because if not, the talent will look at the NRL and say, hey, I can go to the NRL and become a multimillionaire there over my career. Look at if I'm a Samoan kid, right? I'm looking at Brian To'o. I'm looking at Jerome Luai. I'm looking at Papali'i with the Canberra Raiders. We're looking at Crichton, right? With the Bulldogs. You're looking at Sonny Bill. Well, you're looking at it they're all over the place. NRL, and they're like, oh, maybe I should take my talents there. Maybe there's more opportunity there. And then what happens to the rugby union product, not just in Samoa, but the rugby product around the world will be diminished. And then rugby union will be in the same problem it was in the early 90s, where it looks like it was dying and they were forced to go professional, and that re-energized rugby union around the world and changed it to what it is now. But it looks like it's another cycle. Rugby league is on an upswing, rugby union is in a downswing, and they're going to have to figure out what's going on there. So I'm going to go through some of the comments here. Here's Clyde Moore. Doing the talk. Yeah, 100%. And like I mentioned earlier, Clyde Moore, I think they know this, right? They know. It's like, well, what are you going to do? Not invest in Samoan rugby, where you're getting all the Tuilangi brothers that, is basically contributing to not just Samoan rugby, but to English rugby in the club level and the English rugby on the international level. And that's just one example, right? It's a shakedown, and they kind of know where they're at. Just Mickey Mouse gangster Water Bears, Mickey Mouse. Let's see. Oh, this brought a smile to my face here, Jose, right? Because that's every weekend, right? Pakimoetoi, if everybody's like around midnight, 1:00, if you want to go watch a fight break out, you go there, because it's right on the border between Takamotonga and La Paja. And as they're coming out, there's always a fight, because the Takamotonga and La Paja are like brothers, right? They're always fighting each other. But the funny thing is, when someone else messes with one of the brothers, then all of a sudden they're united. It's hilarious. It's a funny thing. They truly are like siblings. It was just like that Hatejo situation. There were a bunch of La Paja guys in there, and they didn't leave. They stayed there because why? The only person that's allowed to beat up the Takamotonga is La Paja, and the only person that's allowed to beat up La Paja is the Takamotonga. It's really like a sibling rivalry. Maybe all the islands need to invest in hybrid rugby and manufacture players for the world export market for their respective. No, and that's Polynesia needs to kind of, maybe we have to come up with the idea, like you're saying, Orator, because when we're just leaving it to world rugby, it's the same old thing. And maybe we're okay with that, because as long as world rugby's writing the check and giving opportunities for our youth to go overseas, maybe we're happy with that. As long as, from my perspective, is you're never going to find a solution. There's only trade-offs. And no matter what decision you make, there's a pro and a con, and then the other side is a pro and a con. There's never a solution. As long as you're happy with the trade-off, that's the best decision. And maybe I've never thought of that, Orator, but that's a reasonable idea. Maybe Polynesia needs to pull together kind of like a union and say, hey, look, they obviously need us. They're willing to write us the checks. Maybe we need to, we're not a unified nation anymore, but maybe we need to be a unified rugby association, and we develop our own, pool our resources together. Fiji has a large economy. They have 1 million people. They have a lot more natural resources. So that's why the Flying Fijians are a little bit more ahead, in my opinion, because they have the talent and they've coupled that with the financial capacity, kind of where New Zealand has been for the last 20, 30 years. But New Zealand's now to suffer a little bit because now Asia and Europe are taking the young Polynesians younger and younger from New Zealand. Basically what New Zealand was doing to Tonga, Samoa, and Fiji for decades, New Zealand is now experiencing some of their own medicine now that Japan and even the US is pulling talent from New Zealand, and Australia is pulling talent from New Zealand. New Zealand's getting a taste of their own medicine for all I'm concerned. But that's an interesting idea, Orator, and maybe an idea of that sort where, the Polynesian nations come together, pull the resources, and try to say, hey, let's develop our own solution to give our kids to maximize the opportunity for our athletes. Don't know exactly how that would look, but that's an interesting idea, Orator. 2007, Kalitahi did great and won the hearts of many Tongans, but every year is the same problem. They win 1-2 games and then not make the playoffs. The digressing is the same. No, 100%. And you know what's crazy about that, George? The players, not only did they not get paid the meager $200 or $50 paanga, which is ridiculous for each game, but the reports are, even after that successful 2007 or 2011, whichever one it was, they had to pay out of their pocket for the hotel, because Tonga Rugby Union officials, who were supposed to pay for the hotel, they partied and had a great time in the boxed seats in the stadium, and then they left, and the players had to front the bill, right? And we're going to show a video why. I don't blame the Tongan players for not wanting to play for the Ikaretai. I'm not familiar with the new coach, Tui. I never really heard of him, but I would have to agree. I have some concerns. We lose to the Reds. We lose to Spain. And who else did we lose to? I'm like, holy smokes, can we do anything right? Right? And then it's just concerning. We can't even win against the weak teams in Super Rugby. I don't know. And especially with a World Cup coming around the corner, I'm wondering why Totai Kefu left. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why he would have left. I mean, the guy is probably bleeding money left and right. So that, then dealing with the politics is probably annoying as heck. Sounds like issue with Tongan financial 100%. Like I said, World Rugby's like, we're not gonna. First, they said you got to deal with it. you guys aren't recording what you're spending money on, blah, 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 blah. And Tonga Rugby Union is like, okay, whatever, man. I'm just telling you, everything's going to shut down. Then when World Rugby came and said, yeah, we'll write you a check, but you need to show us where you're going to spend the money. And Tonga Rugby Union is like, we're going to spend it on Rugby Union. Are you going to give us the money or not? And World Rugby just caved in and gave them the money. And so nothing changes. That's why it's the same old, same old. Tongan rugby grassroots is suffering because the good players are getting scouted by New Zealand and Japan, age of 15. All the Tautupu now are heading, yep, 100%. You know, the financial opportunities are being presented at a younger and younger age. And like you said, and it's not just sports now with the labor opportunities to go work and make make New Zealand and Australian wages, but come back to Tonga with those resources, make a huge impact on the quality of life for your family. Immediate injection of improvement of quality of life back home. Yeah, there's definitely competition in that. Bro, in New Zealand 2007, we felt like we were on top of the world. Tongans everywhere. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. All over the place. And Tongans, Samoans, all over, Polynesians, Fijians, everywhere. It's really cool to see. I mean, every major nation, and even on the minor nations like Romania, there's Polynesians on them. It's just crazy. Once again, we're continuing to live exude the characteristics of our ancestors of just going to unknown areas and building a life for ourselves. That is what our ancestors did for thousands of years in settling and building and developing and governing the Polynesian nation that we lived under for thousands of years. What about the Moana team? I mean, yeah, that's kind of interesting. With the Moana team, especially with Artie Savea coming over, that could be an interesting pathway for Polynesians, especially as they pick them up from the local clubs. Really, the Drua of Fiji, I think Fiji is benefiting tremendously from that. Good for them. I'm excited for them. And that's just, the Drua is just going to continue to develop their talent. And it's great for them. The Moana Pacifica team, it's based in New Zealand, so not really in Tonga and Samoa, and that, for obvious reasons, for financial reasons, makes sense. But it makes it more difficult. And the cool thing for Fiji is they're able to have home games a lot more in Fiji. The Moana Pacifica is not as often. It was great to see the Super Rugby in Tonga. Never would have thought I would see Super Rugby in Tonga growing up as a kid, but that's pretty exciting. 2007 was the first mob in Otahu, then 11, and then on to, if that's the one thing, dude, is whenever those games or tournaments are in New Zealand, and probably with Australia as well, there's a lot more turn up, but ain't no doubt, man, when there's a rugby competition in New Zealand, Polynesians flood that. So yeah, cool history. 1973 beating the Wallabies. Would love to do that again. Obviously, the Samoans and the Fijians have done that as of recent. Would be great for Tonga, but hey, we got to beat the Reds first. We got to beat Spain first before we have aspirations of repeating some of the glory days in 1973 against the Wallabies. Moana picked Pat Pellegrini. He did. I didn't know who that athlete was, Nacho, until the last World Cup, where he made that one try when he came in. I mean, there's some interesting talent out there. It's just, in Tonga, we're just good at, spending the money on the wrong things. And when I say wrong things, on everything that has nothing to do with building up the ikaletahi, unfortunately. All right. Our last video of the day is an example of hilarious example of a story on why don't blame any Polynesian, but especially a Tongan, for not choosing the ikaletahi or mate tonga, though it seems like the mate tonga is better managed. Even though there's that chaos, and I have to withdraw that. There's the whole issue of the Tonga National Rugby League, and yeah, it's not much better on the Tonga Rugby League either. So, but here's a fun story about Tongan Fijian national and how he made his decision onto which country to represent.
I'll never get sick of hearing this, but can you tell me what was that opportunity that
Oh,
Fiji provided?
let me. Oh, I didn't share the video. My bad. Oi, running on Steam, guys. This is definitely going to be the last video, and then we're going to call this Kava session to adjourn.
I'll never get sick of hearing this, but can you tell me what was that opportunity that Fiji provided compared to Tonga?
Oh, this is probably one of the toughest stories I always tell. I always hope the Tongans aren't listening too hard, you know. Mate, so back 2009, you know, I decided to pursue a career, try to get into the Tonga Ikaletahi team. So I sent the coach at the time, Stolo Maka, an email saying, "Oh, mate, what would it take for me to get into the Ikaletahi? What do I have to do? You know, show me, tell me what I need to do, and I'll be on it." He said, "Look, pay for your own flights, fly into Tonga on this date. You know, there's a trial on this date at Del Favour. This, bring your own gear, bring this, do everything yourself." Right? And I said, "Okay." So this is an opportunity. This is something you have to take. You know, when you're trying to crack it. You know, and so booked the tickets, booked the flights, booked the accommodation, started getting contact with family in Tonga, let them know I'm coming in, I need somewhere to stay, blah, 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 blah. Halfway, like, so I booked the ticket today, mate, and the flight was set for 2 weeks' time. Got to the weekend of that same week, Fiji got in contact. Fiji got in contact for a coach that I was playing with at Shoot Shield who asked me, "Mate, just a quick question, mate. Is it true your mum's Fijian?" I said, "Yes." Okay, really? I said, "Yeah." "Fijian born and raised?" I said, "Yeah, Fijian born and raised." And then he said, "Mate, how would you like to play for Fiji?" And I said, "Yeah, okay, yeah. Well, when's the trial for Fiji? I'm going for a trial for Tonga next weekend, but I can trial for Fiji as well." And he said, no trial, mate. We'll pay for your tickets and everything, and then we'll bring you up to the Flying Fijians." And I said, "Okay, mate, got a deal." So then I weighed it all up, you know. Didn't have to pay for my own flights, didn't have to pay for my accommodation, and I was no trial or nothing. I was straight into the squad, and then I called his Tolomaka, and he said, "Oh, mate, good luck with it, mate. We'll see how far you go with it." And then the rest is history, man.
Over 50 games later,
Yeah,
GG.
exactly. Well, and then we're gonna progress that. So from obviously with the World Cup, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it because you played 3 of them. But your debut for Fiji, it's against your brother Salesi. You packed down against him against the Wallabies down in Canberra. Mate, explain to us what was that feeling like?
Far out, man. That was probably, I think that was more nerve-wracking for me.
So when you have to pay for everything, and he probably dodged a bullet because now he would have to pay for his food when he travels, pay for his hotel. If he gets injury, pay for your own injury, pay, or Fiji pays for everything. He gets in, he gets his international cap, which makes him more valuable to professional clubs, which increases his opportunity. And in many ways, the Fijian brand may be a stronger brand, right? Especially now. Why the heck wouldn't you not go to Fiji? You know, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that we're dealing with, right? And hopefully, good for him. I think he made the right choice. He's got to make the choice that's best for him and his family and the opportunities that provide for his family and his needs. So good for him. I'm excited for him. Don't blame him for making his choice. I probably would have made the same choice, and maybe after establishing myself, maybe come around to representing the motherland after business is taken care of. But with that being said, to all my brothers and sisters out there for listening, malo, we appreciate it. Thank you for the support. Please I Oh, looks like we have a comment. We have a comment here before we go too far. I'm not surprised, Tonga. They did that to my dad body, but yeah, resent Tonga. Yeah, we're really good at just messing it up. We're really good at messing it up. That's what we'll just say with that, Nacho. You know, you bring the talent, you bring and put in front of them, and Tonga says, "Nah, we like doing it the hard way." But thank everyone for your time. Really, it's always a pleasure. Please like, share, subscribe. It does go a very long way for helping us get the exposure. We've honestly, I was talking with Masi about this. We are light years ahead of where we thought we could ever be. So hopefully we can maintain that momentum. Appreciate all the Usos for joining us. And Orator, once again, reach out. We'd love to kind of maintain our momentum. We'd love to have you share your ideas, put it on the table, let the team, all the viewers on the Kava session, listen, ponder, put their observations, their critiques, or their support behind it, and we can find a way to, build common ground without sacrificing the truth. We want to build common ground, but not at the price of sacrificing what's true and what we believe is true. And with that being said, as always, ask the hard questions, stay curious, and until next time, Malo. Peace.